He is the standard where Michael Jordan wins it again.
And just like that, Super Bowl 58 in the 2023 season is in the rearview mirror. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
What'd you think of the Super Bowl?
Pretty solid.
It was not. I did not think it was an all-time game. I thought it was, an entertaining game. It obviously was a close game going to overtime, but I'm not going to be one of these people that says an all-time game. So, by the way, I did hear the midday show and how they wrapped up talking about that Andy Reid, Travis Kelce stuff. We will get into that this hour. But I want to start on this, which is the real takeaway from Super Bowl 58. Now, I said this, that I was going to watch the game and I was not going to come into it with narratives in my head about how, if Brock Purdy wins this, then Brock Purdy's an elite quarterback. Let's see how Brock Purdy plays before we decide how to feel about Brock Purdy after a game. But this Super Bowl was about one thing to me. It wasn't about Mahomes' greatness, but I don't want to take anything away from him. It wasn't about Andy Reid winning another title. It wasn't about the Chiefs' dynasty, which they are, in fact, a dynasty. You win 3, you're a dynasty. Jeter and the Yankees in the 90s, dynasty. The Toronto Blue Jays, 2, not so much. So I absolutely think 3 makes you a dynasty. Jordan had 3, Shaq and Kobe had 3. Those are dynasties. The Patriots had 2 dynasties because they had 2 separate sets of winning 3. So absolutely Kansas City's a dynasty, but this isn't about them. This is about Kyle Shanahan because he totally blew it. It's on him. And I did not go into this game thinking about Kyle Shanahan and how if San Francisco can't get the job done, then Kyle Shanahan becomes he can't win the big one. He poops his pants in every big moment. He needs to be wearing a diaper on the sidelines, coach, and that's who he is. Marv Levy, move over. Dan Reeves, let's add some room at the table for Kyle Shanahan, the greatest choke artist of our time. I mean, San Francisco absolutely blew that game. Now, does that mean that Kansas City doesn't have good players? No, it doesn't. They do. They have great players. But once Kyle Shanahan got put on tilt last night, he never seemed to gain control of the game. He got out-coached at the end of regulation by Steve Spagnuolo, and that was mano-y-mano. Spags calling the defense, Shanahan calling the offense. I mean, especially right there at the end of regulation. And this was so typical Kyle Shanahan. This was Kyle Shanahan with the Falcons. This was Kyle Shanahan with the 10-point lead in the first Super Bowl. This was Kyle Shanahan with the double-digit fourth-quarter lead against the Rams in 2021. This was Kyle Shanahan yesterday. At the end of regulation, all San Francisco needed was 1 first down. They hand the ball to Christian McCaffrey, who gains 5 yards on first down. Kansas City's defense was gassed. And you know what Shanahan did? He didn't give it back to him. All you needed was 1 first down. That's it. You get a first down, Kansas City's using their timeouts, so now they can't stop the clock. You kick a field goal, and Mahomes never gets the ball back. That was the whole key to the entire game. Do not give Mahomes the ball back. And he couldn't do it. Nope. We got to come up with some special super whoop-de-doop play with Brock Purdy trying to get the ball to George Kittle. Congratulations. You have the best running back on the planet. You took the ball out of his hands. Gee, Kyle Shanahan not running the ball late in the game. Have I ever? Oh, yeah. That's how you blow 28-3. And he did that too. Now, not only did those mistakes happen, but then we also had the special teams mistakes. And those, again, that's a coaching thing, right? Ray McCloud, dive on the ball. I understand that was a bad, funky bounce. So the next time that Rand Carthon tries to tell you the ball didn't bounce our way, that is the ball not bouncing your way when it hits a guy in the heel on the punt team. Ray McLeod saw it all and didn't dive on the ball. They missed a PAT. And anytime you miss a PAT in a game, you go to overtime, we can always have the discussion of, well, if they had made their PATs just like the Titans had earlier this year. But I just don't get it. End of regulation. Tired Chiefs defense on the ropes, 5 yards away and 2 downs to get it with McCaffrey, who ended up averaging, I think, like 3.6 yards a carry. But at that point, it was like McCaffrey for 6, McCaffrey for 8, McCaffrey for 5, McCaffrey for... You got the best left tackle in the NFL. You've got the best running back in the NFL. And you take the ball out of his hands. Moronic. That's what a choke artist does. Then we get to overtime. Now, I am shocked by the amount of people who apparently don't know the overtime rules. Do you guys not remember all the whining and crying after that Kansas City-Buffalo game in 2021 about Josh Allen didn't get the ball? And so we changed the rules because Josh Allen didn't get the ball? I remember it. So the amount of people that don't know the rule, that's one thing. The rule is each team gets a possession. Even if you score a touchdown and you go for 2, you get a possession. The only way one team doesn't get to play offense is if the first offensive team throws a defensive score. That's it. And then they lose. Other than that, you get the ball back again. Some of you don't seem to understand this. It is different than the regular season rule. So I'm sitting there before the kickoff, and I tweeted this out. I'm like, you got to defer that, right? Nope. Kyle Shanahan, give us the ball. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, oh, my God, the best offensive coach in the NFL. And I think Shanahan is a better play caller in September, October, November, December, and January than Andy Reid is. He's just not better in February in the second half, apparently. The best offensive coach in the NFL all of a sudden morphs into Dan Campbell. And to do it again, it makes no sense to take the ball. We want the ball third. Well, if we score and they score, then we get the ball and we can win. We're worried about the third possession of overtime when the other team has Patrick Mahomes? And again, if it happens one time, there can be a lot of factors at play here, right? Like we can sit back and we can pick apart each one of these losses and we can say, if Matt Ryan doesn't fumble the ball on the Dante Hightower sack, if Julian Edelman doesn't make that incredible catch, if Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't miss Emmanuel Sanders, if Jaquiski Tart doesn't drop the Matthew Stafford interception in the NFC title game, if Jake Moody makes his PAT, we can do this with every single one of these Shanahan losses. But the reality is there is one constant in all of them. Want to take a guess what it is? It ain't Jimmy G. It ain't Jaquiski Tart. Nope. It's Shanahan. He's the one constant. Just like Mahomes. We can play this game with Mahomes, can't we? Oh, if the Titans had stopped the Mahomes run before the end of the half. Oh, if Tyler Bass had made the field goal, if Buffalo had made a stop with 13 seconds to go, if Zay Flowers didn't reach the ball out over the end zone, if all these things didn't happen, then Mahomes wouldn't have won any of these titles. But guess what? Somehow, some way, Mahomes is always there at the end. He and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce, they're the constants. Just like Shanahan on the other side of this is the constant. He is the greatest loser of this generation of the NFL. He is on the Marty Schottenheimer path to, man, I wish that guy had won a Super Bowl. Man, I wish Marv Levy and those Buffalo Bills would have won a Super Bowl. It is unfathomable to have at some point been somewhat in charge. Because, again, he was offensive coordinator in Atlanta. He wasn't the head coach. But it is unfathomable for one coach who, quite frankly, might be the best coach in the NFL. It is unfathomable to have 3 double-digit leads in the Super Bowl and blow them all. If I was Shanahan, I'd hire Bill Belichick as a consultant. And when we get in the second half of the Super Bowl next year, I am taking my headset off and I am handing it to Bill. Bill, take my headset, please, so I don't do anything wrong. It's like every time we have these reads, hey, gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line. Hey, second half in the Super Bowl problems? Let somebody else call the plays. Because clearly Shanahan cannot win the big one. He should be doing ads next year in the Super Bowl for Depends. Because he fills up that diaper in those big games unlike any coach I have ever seen. And that's the story of Super Bowl 58. It's not about Kelsey and Andy Reid. It's not about the dynasty of the Chiefs. It's not about Steve Spagnuolo, who freaking coached a gym again. Spagnuolo is the opposite of Kyle Shanahan. You put him in a big spot. I don't care if it's the greatest offense I've ever seen, that 2007 Patriots team. Spagnuolo will have a plan, especially at the end of the game. But I mean, to me, I walk out of this one and I'm like, Kyle Shanahan is the biggest loser of our time. That's just it. Marty Schottenheimer, Dan Reeves, Marv Levy. I'm trying to think who else in the NFL loses as many big games as Kyle Shanahan does. But that's who he is now. And it doesn't matter. It does not matter who's on that team. Because Atlanta was a totally different team than the first San Francisco team, which was a totally different team than last night's team. And somehow, some way, he just can't ever finish the job. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Your reaction to last night, 615-737-1025. And again, I'm not taking anything away from the Chiefs. It's just not the number one story to me. Now, the kickoff at overtime. What Shanahan said, and this is going to be the last time that we talk about this, and I'm not talking about Shanahan doing this, but the real reason why Shanahan decided to take the football. We'll do that next. 615-737-1025. It is the Super Bowl reaction. It is kind of a sad day around here because we don't have a football game for 7 months. So it is kind of a sad day. We got the draft. We got hockey. But, again, we don't have a football game for forever, so this is kind of our last recap there. 615-737-1025, and we will get to your phones as we always do here on our program. Be sure to tune in to Robbie and Rex Road tomorrow morning from 6 to 9 a.m. on 102.5 The Game, so you can see details on how you can win tickets to see Kenny Chesney and Zach Brown Band at Nissan Stadium on August 3rd, and we will be giving away tickets later today in the show for Dierks Bentley at Bridgestone Arena on Saturday, September 7th. So be listening for that. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for The Game.
Great job, gentlemen. We're going to play overtime. Playoff overtime, we're going to start a new game. All replays are upstairs. Everybody will have 3 timeouts. All right? Both teams will have an opportunity to score or opportunity to possess unless the first team is a defensive score. All right, any questions? San Francisco, you are still the visitors. What is your call?
Tails again.
He called tails again. It is tails. You want the ball. Which way do you want to kick? San Francisco will receive first in overtime. Good luck, gentlemen.
With overtime coming up at Super Bowl 58, you might be wondering just strategically, since each team is guaranteed a possession, do you want the football first?
It's a very tough one because you always want to be like, well, I want to be able to go for it on 4th down and know what it is, right? If I have to score, get a field goal, that's an advantage. However, if my defense is very tired and I just got off the field, I might want to give them a break. Those are the 2 things that you're thinking in that moment because there's no conditions indoors that matter.
Okay, so last night they go out there, and I know again that this is the first time that we've ever had this with these new rules. It's like college football, right? I mean, it's a little different, but it's kind of like college football from the sense of you want to go second so you know what you need to get. And San Francisco goes, we'll take the ball. And when I saw that, and you hear Vinovich is like, oh, they're going to take the ball. If I had been the referee, I'd have been like, are you sure you want to do that?
You can't do that if you're the ref.
referee.
You can't double.
I just want to make sure there's no misconfusion here. And apparently there wasn't. So as I'm sitting there watching the game, and you guys got to remember, I had no rooting interest in this other than I guaranteed the Chiefs to win on Friday, which, by the way, Ian, mark me down for another guarantee.
That's a win.
Thank you. So I had no rooting interest in this game. You guys know I love Shanahan, right? Like I always talk about how much I love him. Now I think he's probably the biggest loser of our time. But still, again, if I'm rooting for the take, it's like I want Shanahan to not look like a moron. And instead, when they said we'll take the ball, I thought, you freaking morons. What are you doing? If Mahomes knows he has to score a touchdown, Mahomes is going to score a touchdown. We all know that. And so, I mean, to me, I want the ball second if I'm San Francisco because I want to hope that we can get them into a 4th down where they decide, let's kick a field goal and then put our defense back out on the field. And then I know, hey, if I score a touchdown, I win. If I kick a field goal, then we're back at it and whatever. I mean, again, you want the ball second because you get it no matter what. If you force a turnover, the game is over. Just go kick the field goal, you win. And instead, Shanahan wants the ball. And here was his explanation. Last night, I kept trying to find the press conferences. Is there not a TV channel in the world that has the press conferences? NFL Network. They were on the field. Oh, let's talk to I'm trying to think of some bozo that, random person they put up. Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Let's put him on the show. Hey, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, tell us about your sunglasses you're wearing right now. I mean, it was awful. I switched to ESPN. Boomer's on the field. I do love Boomer, but still, I want to hear Kyle Shanahan's explanation. So finally, around 1 a.m, I finally heard what Shanahan's explanation was. This was this.
It's just something we talked about with, that none of us have a ton of experience of it, but we went through all the analytics and talked to those guys, and we just thought it'd be better. We wanted the ball third. If both teams matched and scored, we wanted to be the ones who had the chance to go win, and we got that field goal, so we knew we had to hold them to at least to a field goal, and if we did, then we felt it was in our hands after that.
Here's what's amazing. Shanahan said we want the ball third. First of all, let's worry about getting the ball third when it comes to the ball being third. I'm not sure we will ever see that because somebody will say, you know what, I want to go for the win right here. And by the way, even if they had scored a touchdown, Kansas City said after the game, yeah, if we got the ball back and we scored, we were going for 2. Which I would have done too. With Patrick Mahomes, I'm going for 2. I'm not giving Brock Purdy a chance to go down the field, kick a field goal, and win the Super Bowl. I'm putting the ball in the hands of Mahomes. And if I lose with Mahomes, I lose with Mahomes. But I love it, right? Well, none of us have been in this situation before, which is fair. And the analytics department said that we should take the ball first. Does the analytics department factor in that Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback of this era? the post-Tom Brady era, he is by far the best quarterback, the best big game quarterback of this post-Tom Brady era. Does that factor that in? Somebody help me out here. So if I own the Titans, I think I'd walk in today, call the analytics department in, and fire all of them. Because these analytics in football, why did the Lions lose? Analytics. Why did the 49ers get the ball? Analytics. It seems like analytics keeps adding up to losing. I'm shocked by this. The Ravens are the analytic team. How many championships they've won? And so we talked about it with the analytics department. Great. And tell me what mathematic formula they use to account for Patrick Mahomes and how great he is. Somebody help me out there. Unbelievable. I could not believe that Kyle Shanahan took that ball to start overtime. And again, that's because he's the biggest pants crapper of our era. Again, the post-Brady era. And I can't even think off the top of my head of the Brady era. Like, who was the biggest loser coach that just always lost? And the guy who it was, you know what's crazy about this, Ian? You know who the guy who was the biggest loser before the Mahomes era, right?
Andy Reid.
It was Andy Reid. It was Andy Reid walking to the line of scrimmage and huddling up in the Super Bowl down by 2 scores with 5 minutes to go. It was Andy Reid at home at the Vet losing to Tampa Bay and Brad Johnson. It was Andy Reid all those years with Donovan McNabb. And then Alex Smith, they blew that huge playoff lead against Indianapolis. They lost to Mariota and the Titans in a playoff game. It was Andy Reid. And now he's a winner. And the biggest loser of our time is Shanahan. I see your phones lined up. I promise we're to them next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025 here on a post-Super Bowl edition of Stillman and Company. Tomorrow is your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Rexroad tomorrow morning at 8:45 a.m. And Pick to Click is brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold.
But this is it. 3rd and 4. Use your legs. You saw him use it earlier with that spatial awareness, but you've got to go ahead and get a motion to get your best players off of their best players. Right now, their 2 best defenders are guarding your 2 best wide receivers.
McCaffrey in motion. They fake the handoff to him. Chiefs in on Purdy so fast he had to just unload it. So the drive stalls at the Chiefs' 5-yard line. And it was Chris Jones who really broke up the play, wrecked it.
I want you to watch him. This is for the Super Bowl. Because Chris Jones comes through. Watch on the bottom. Jennings wins for the Super Bowl right down there. But there's no time. Because Chris Jones does it again like he did to Josh Allen in the divisional.
By the way, Tony, it was not for the Super Bowl there. Kansas City would have gotten the ball back. That's okay. Apparently, a lot of people didn't know the rules, including 49er players. Ian, did you see that?
I find that so hard to believe at this point.
The Chiefs basically were like, our coaches bothered the crap out of us about how overtime works in the playoffs, so much so that it drove us insane. And on the other end, they're like, oh, damn, we didn't even know the rules. Now, quite frankly, it doesn't really matter if they know the rules, because it really matters if the coaches know the rules. But I am dumbfounded by how many people care about this sport. Because you can talk football. When I was in Vegas, I talked to all the people at Sirius. And I asked them, how much NBA do you guys watch? And literally all of them, except for Michelle Beadle, who hosts an NBA show on television, was like, not a lot. Not really. Because it's all football now. So when they changed that rule, do you guys not remember that? Do you not remember the, Buffalo, Josh Allen didn't get the ball? I guess a lot of you didn't. Ian, I know you knew the rule last night.
I remembered that. I remembered that they were going to get the ball back. The only thing I got confused about was the clock.
Right. So I do wonder this, because they said starting a new game. If they had gone, like let's say Kansas City kicked a field goal, and so now it's sudden death, and they just keep punting it to one another. Like, do we have a 2-minute warning? And then at the end of the second overtime period, would we kick off again, but Kansas City would get the ball? Mm-hmm. No matter what. Again, and that I have no idea about. They said start a new game, so I assume that's what that means. We'll never see that, so it doesn't matter.
When he said start a new game, I guess it makes sense that, hey, it's just like the first quarter.
Right.
So, yeah, but I guess I got confused towards the end. Like, hey, if Kansas City doesn't score and they run out of time, is the game over? So, but obviously not.
So, I mean, the amount of people that didn't know this is shocking to me. But so I guess I can't get mad at the fans that don't know it. If the 49er players and Tony Romo forgot it, was like, oh, this was for the Super Bowl, Jim. Actually, it wasn't, Tony. Let's go to your phones. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. You guys have been hanging on for a while. Michael is going to start us off today on Kyle Shanahan. Thank you for calling. What's up, Michael?
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Yeah, you said it at the very end of last segment where it's basically like he feels like he's eagled Andy Reid right now, because it's like he can never get over the hump. But the weirdest thing about the game was you can't really point to a one player where it was like, oh, he had a really bad game. Mm-hmm. Other than, I guess, maybe Ray McLeod with that weird play, but I mean, that was one play of the entire game. But as far as it goes, I mean, Christian McCaffrey did his job. Brock Purdy did. The wide receivers did, except for like one drop by Debo. The defensive players all did their jobs for most of the time.
Sure.
The defensive line was doing good. So when you say you can't really single one player out and say, wow, he really did poorly. Like we could do all this year with our tackle situation.
Michael, this is a great call. And I appreciate it, because I think you're spot on with this. There's not one play in that Super Bowl that was that quote-unquote Super Bowl moment play. Do you know what I'm talking about? Malcolm Butler, again, we all experienced it around here, 1 yard short. Like, there wasn't that unbelievable Julian Edelman catch. There wasn't the incredible Mario Manningham or David Tyree helmet grab. There wasn't like any just wild and crazy moment in that game. And again, not to take away from Mahomes' greatness, because he is an all-time quarterback and he is the best quarterback of this era. And if Joe Burrow doesn't catch up pretty soon, it's going to be the Mahomes era. And it probably already is. Like, we had the Brady era, and now we have the Mahomes era. And so I'm not taking anything away from him. But he did not make one of his signature special wow, oh my God plays last night. I mean, he had the one where he ran it up the middle, but other than that, I cannot think of one, oh my God, did you see that Patrick Mahomes play? I can't believe he did that. Holy crap. I mean, we didn't have one of those.
He had that one nice deep throw.
The one early in the game that they ended up fumbling on the next play?
Yeah, that he kind of dropped it in there. It was kind of, I don't know, it was like 50 yards, but that's about it.
Yeah, and to that point, I guess like those big Super Bowl moments usually don't happen in the first half. No, it's usually that like, wow, I can't believe it. What an incredible, like if the and what's crazy is some of these Super Bowls have multiple plays like that, right? Like if the Titans had won that Super Bowl against the Rams, there's a play right before the play where they hit Kevin Dyson and they lose at the 1 yard line. There's a play where Steve McNair gets away from DeMarco Farr and Kevin Carter, who both have him down for a sack that would have essentially ended the game. The Titans would have had to take that last time out, and they would have had to throw to the end zone from the 40-yard line. And instead, McNair runs both guys off and chucks the ball 25 yards down the field to Kevin Dyson. It is a David Tyree type play that we would have remembered if they had won that game. And there wasn't one of those plays in last night's game. There wasn't one of them. Normally, that only happens in the blowout Super Bowls. In the really, really close ones. And that's where I look back at the coach, and I'm like, man, this really was Steve Spagnuolo winning the game against Kyle Shanahan. Cam is up next here on a Super Bowl Monday. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Cam?
Hey, man, so, I'm not disagreeing with anything that you're saying. However, Andy Reid was, you brought this up earlier, he was the Eagles Eagles head coach from 99, I think, till 12 or 13 or 14. And I was looking, and his stats are still terrible right now. If it wasn't for Kansas City, which, quote-unquote, Patrick Mahomes, you know what I mean?
Sure.
His stats would still be pretty bad. He had 9 winning seasons and 5 losing seasons with Philadelphia. And he was 10-9 in the playoffs with Philly.
Hey, you're making valid points. And Kyle Shanahan's career's not over. But, I mean, right now, he is the greatest loser out there. And to your point, Cam.
He's definitely on the fast track to get to Andy Reid. I agree with you.
Well, no, Andy Reid has washed that away. Just like Peyton Manning washed it away. Just like Alex Rodriguez washed it away. I mean, I appreciate your call, Cam. Just like Lamar Jackson still has time to wash away the fact that he can't win the big one. He can't. He still has an opportunity to be able to do that. And so does Shanahan. But right now, I don't know why you'd have any faith that Lamar Jackson could win the big one or that Shanahan could win the big one. I mean, I have no idea why you'd have any faith that Kyle Shanahan can win a big game like that. But I will say this to your point about Andy Reid, which also echoes my point about Andy Reid before he got Mahomes. I mean, I remember doing a show before the AFC Championship game in 2019, before Mahomes won his first Super Bowl, and my take was, with the old man, basically, we as Titan fans have to hope that Andy Reid screws up in Andy Reid fashion. Because Andy Reid had been screwing up miraculously in Andy Reid fashion. The year before, the Chiefs lost the AFC title game to New England because Dee Ford lined up offsides on a Tom Brady interception that would have ended the football game. Again, that's what happens when you're a chronic loser, is that you find these just inexplicable ways to lose. But then Mahomes changed all of that. I was actually thinking about that last night because Mike Shanahan has 2 Super Bowls and Kyle Shanahan has 0 Super Bowls. But I would argue that Kyle Shanahan is actually the better coach than Mike Shanahan because Mike Shanahan won his 2 Super Bowls with John Elway. And this goes back to Andy Reid, right? Where I look at Andy Reid, and he was the greatest loser in the NFL for 20 years, and then he got Mahomes. And Mike Shanahan wasn't a big loser because he had John Elway. You know, Marv Levy, hate to say it, you had Jim Kelly and you lost 4 Super Bowls. I mean, whose fault's that? So, Purdy, I thought Purdy played a decent game last night. I certainly think Purdy, when we had Chad on Friday at the Super Bowl, I asked him where he would rank Purdy, and I believe he came up like 7th. I think it was after Mahomes, Burrow, Rodgers, Allen, Lamar, and somebody else, Herbert. And then he put Purdy right after that. And I watched Purdy play yesterday, and I'm like, you know what? I can put Purdy ahead of Dak Prescott. I don't think there's that much of a difference between Purdy and Jalen Hurts. When Jalen's on and when Purdy's on, they're both good. They're both good quarterbacks. And Purdy has the potential to get better, whereas Jalen and Dak are kind of in their primes. They are what they are. So I can roll with that. But I do wonder if, Andy needed Mahomes before Andy could take his great coaching to the next level. And I also think maybe Kyle needs to do a little bit better at quarterback. Either he's got to get Purdy better or he's got to do a little bit better. Because the one reason I don't think anybody's talking about when it comes to why San Francisco lost this game, San Francisco could have buried Kansas City in the first half, but they didn't convert on the turnovers. And if you're not going to convert on the turnovers in the NFL, you're not going to win. That's like, they get the miracle, ball hits off the guy's foot and Ray McCloud doesn't dive on it, and the next play, Mahomes hits Valdez-Scantling for a touchdown. You got to convert on those. So I do think that's, again, part of if he has a better quarterback, then is Shanahan like Andy Reid winning all these championships, like his dad winning all these championships? If he had Matthew Stafford, because Sean McVay won his championship with Matthew Stafford, and I'm not a huge Matthew Stafford fan. If he had Matthew Stafford, would he be able to have won the game last night? I don't know. I feel like Matt Ryan and Matthew Stafford are kind of comparable, and he blew it with Matt Ryan, so make of it what you will. 615-737-1025. Boy, we got a lot of text to get to. I got to say this about Andy Reid. I got an Andy Reid take. We'll get to that next. And I guarantee you, you're not hearing this Andy Reid take from anywhere else. Stillman and Company on a Super Bowl Monday, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
I'm just so proud of the defense, man, and the whole team effort. Special teams, Harrison Bucker hitting from about 70. Offense stepping up when it's needed. This game just was the microcosm of our entire season. It was everybody. It wasn't just offense. It wasn't just defense. Everybody had to step up, and it was a heck of a run. I think it made us tougher for moments like right now.
There you go. That was Patrick Mahomes talking about, hey, how about that defense? Yes, the defense. So I have an Andy Reid take. And look, Andy Reid's a first ballot, no doubt, at Hall of Famer. I'm not even going to question that. Nobody should. He's a great coach, so on and so forth. He called a terrible game last night. I mean, he called a terrible game. Almost gave the game to San Francisco. The only reason that he didn't give the game to San Francisco is because San Francisco wouldn't take it. I mean, how many first down runs with Pacheco that were going to get 2 yards because you were getting absolutely manhandled by that 49ers front is Andy Reid going to call? There were 2 back-to-back plays at one point where Mahomes, and I believe this was before the regulation field goal, I can't remember, but there were 2 plays where Mahomes ran and Kansas City's finally starting to get, some momentum. They get 2 first downs on back-to-back plays. Then, probably to give Mahomes a breather, they hand the ball off to Pacheco, and he just kills the whole drive. He kept taking Travis Kelce off the field, which obviously Travis Kelce didn't like very much. He kept, and then how about the one at the beginning of the beginning of the second half in the third quarter? Kelce clearly gets the first down. Like, I don't think there was any question as to whether or not Kelce got the first down. I would have thought about challenging it right there. Like, when I saw it in live time, I'm like, they might want to look at this and challenge it. CBS shows us the replay. It looked to me, honest to God, certain that he got it. But if you don't want to use your challenge to risk burning your timeouts in the second half, I guess I get it. But then when they called the timeout anyways, I'm like, well, oh my God, if you're going to do that, you might as well throw the flag. I mean, if you're going to burn the timeout anyways, if they had done this, they would have gotten their timeout. They would have kept the timeout, and they would have won the challenge. And does he not have somebody up in the booth watching this stuff? I mean, I'm sitting on my couch. If I'm sitting on my couch and I've got a headset and it's dialed into his headset, I'm saying, Andy, challenge a play. And so if you're Andy and you're thinking about calling timeout anyways, and somebody's in your headset saying challenge a play, then just throw the red flag out there. What are we doing? And so I did not think Andy Reid coached a very good game. And again, we're dogging Shanahan today because he lost. And I mean, he botched just basic strategy last night. But how many times are they going to run the ball with Pacheco for 2 yards? I mean, it was just brutal. And so maybe Andy does have some of that big game issue, like when he blew it at the end of the first half in that AFC title game against Joe Burrow. But when he's going up against Ryan Tannehill and Brock Purdy in these playoff games, it doesn't matter unless he goes up against Tom Brady, who he can't beat, or Joe Burrow, who he lost to by an eyelash once and beat by an eyelash once. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. One texter says, do you really want the Titans to emulate the 49ers? So I already went crazy about this last week, but the 3 guys that have left the 49ers and are running teams right now, Ran Carthon here, Adam Peters in Washington, and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah in Minnesota, have shown one thing in common, which is the ability to absolutely bungle one of the basic parts of the job as soon as they take it, which I don't love. So I am concerned about the 49er personnel tree. I also heard some stuff at the Super Bowl about kind of the roles that everybody played with the 49ers. So long story short, the answer is no. I do not want to emulate the 49ers. I would love to have Shanahan as the coach with somebody there that in the Super Bowl can tell him no. They got to Sally rule him in the Super Bowl where you got to do the exact opposite of what it is that you want to do. But I don't think you get the 49er way without Shanahan. And Shanahan today is not the guy you want to emulate because it seems like every time he gets in the Super Bowl, he leaves a giant doo-doo in his diaper. One texter says, I totally disagreed with saying that Kansas City should have won that game. The missed extra point cost San Francisco the game. Otherwise, they would have had it. There was also the fumble on the punt giving San Francisco the ball down in the red zone. They totally gave Kansas City the game. I think I agree with that. That's why my big takeaway from the Super Bowl was not about the dynasty. It was not about Mahomes. It was not about Andy Reid. It was about the fact that Kyle Shanahan's teams find amazing ways in the Super Bowl to blow it, and that the one constant in all of this is Kyle Shanahan. Look, I don't like Jimmy G at all. You all know that. I believe Jimmy G cost them the Super Bowl and the next year's NFC title game with the Rams. But Jimmy didn't blow that 25-point lead in a Super Bowl where he was a backup. Shanahan did, along with the help of Dan Quinn. Jimmy G didn't blow that game last night. You see what I'm saying? It's like, so, yeah, okay, Jimmy G was a problem, and then that, but, I mean, it just, same thing keeps happening over and over and over and over and over again. And if you're the kind of coach that is running your operation, but you have to have Tom Brady or you have to have Peyton Manning in order to win, then the story is about Peyton Manning. It's not about you. Bruce Arians won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. It's a story about him, and you know the answer to that. So I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree that San Francisco gave Kansas City the game. And that's just, again, to me, that's just on Shanahan. Some of you guys are texting in the most random things. Alex from Franklin says, I don't think it's a big deal, but I don't think Will Levis should associate with bad seeds like Phil Mickelson. Was Levis with Phil Mickelson out in Vegas? If he was, Levis is a big boy. Now, I will say this, talking with him last week, I'm just like, man, he is such a kid. And I think it's because now I'm like well past the age of being a kid, whereas when I started doing this, I was like 27. So if I was like 26, 27, he's 24. There's not that big of a difference. I'm 34 now. But I was like, man, this guy, he is a kid. He's big, but he is a kid. One texter says, it was a close Super Bowl, but it wasn't a great or even good Super Bowl. The coaching and player performances were okay, and I wasn't blown away, and Usher stunk at halftime. I have to take offense to one part of that. I thought Usher freaking killed it last night. And I am not a halftime show guy. Like, I do not care about the Super Bowl halftime. I do not care who's performing in it. I quite frankly, other than watching it when it's going on, there's nothing about it that I ever seem to care about. I thought it was really cool when Eminem and Dr. Dre and all them did it a couple of years ago. But for the most part, I don't really give a rat's ass. But I thought Usher was awesome. And I'm not even a big Usher fan. And I thought Usher was awesome in the way they ended it with Little John and Ludacris and oh, my goodness. See, here's my issue with some of this stuff. Somebody texted and says, special teams blew it. Here's my issue. In every game, you can always, unless like one guy just screws up repeatedly, like Tannehill against the Bengals. In every other scenario, you can let somebody off the hook however you want. Well, if this guy had made that play, then this wouldn't have been. No. Yes, special teams stunk for the 49ers for the most part. Now, they did down a punt at the 1-yard line, and Jake Moody hit a Super Bowl record, and then Bucker hit another record. But, again, the special teams mistake by Ray McLeod by not diving on the ball, and then the missed extra point, those were bad. But special teams themselves did not cost the 49ers the game. Kyle Shanahan is the best play caller in the NFL. You have the Chiefs on their heels. You're creeping up to the 2-minute warning. They've got 2 timeouts because, again, they stupidly burned that one that Andy Reid didn't want to challenge the spot, and they just burned a timeout to begin the second half. And so you are 5 yards away at 2nd and 5. Against a tired defense with the best running back in the NFL, the best fullback in the NFL, the best left tackle in the NFL. And you are in prime range to run it and run it and make Kansas City use their timeouts. And if nothing else, if you get a first down, now you kill the clock, and Moody is going out there to kick for the win. You're not giving Mahomes the ball back. But Shanahan couldn't get 5 yards. Shanahan had to run that whoop-de-doo special super play to George Kittle. They gained no yards. And now they're blitzing the crap out of Brock Purdy on third down. And does Shanahan call a screen? Nope. If you're that great of a play caller, you got to beat the blitz. You got to get those 5 yards. If you're the best coach in the NFL. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in here on our program. Coming up next. So, I really didn't think this was that big of a deal. I really did not. I had one little segment dedicated to it today. But apparently everybody's all worked up about something that happened last night. We're to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios here on Super Bowl Monday. So I was not planning. Normally I have a pretty good idea of what people care about when it comes to the big stories. Hell, half the time I think I kind of am the one who starts the big stories, and then it kind of becomes a big thing. But this I did not think was going to be something that people really, truly cared about that much. You know, like when the national anthem thing was going on and people were kneeling, and I'm like, that's going to be a big deal. Last night, after, I think it was the Pacheco fumble, after Isaiah Pacheco fumbled, CBS went down to the sidelines, and they showed Travis Kelce kind of getting up in Andy Reid's grill. And, you know, I mean, I didn't even really see the push at first. I had to go back and look at it like it was the Zapruder tape or something. And so I guess a lot of people were outraged about what happened with Andy Reid and Travis Kelce, and how dare you? I'm serious. I was listening to our midday show, and they were talking about how dare Travis Kelce put his hands on the coach. I listened to a caller earlier today talking about these players are role models, and I can't believe that he would disrespect the coach, and I can't believe he would this. And let me just say this. I saw it last night like everybody else did. I was watching the game. They showed the replay. Kelsey's up in Andy Reid's face, kind of gives him a little push a little bit. Guess what? That's the NFL. I couldn't give a rat's ass about Andy Reid and Travis Kelce getting into it on the sideline the way they did. This is the NFL. Emotions run high. And I know Derek was on the last show and he said, no, it's not the NFL. But Big Joe Dubin's got something of Brian Arakpo pushing Mike Mularkey on the sidelines when they had a big play to win a game. And it's like nobody pays it. Like, that's the NFL. A lot of the players hate their coaches anyways. I mean, I remember all the scuttlebutt when Tom Brady played a game in Buffalo years ago and just lit up Josh McDaniels on the sidelines. And then Brady felt the need to go to the podium the next week and apologize and say, I don't want people to think that I don't really like McDaniels because I love him so much. I'm like, I don't think that. Disagreements happen in these games. I mean, this is everybody's identity, right? And so Travis Kelce's mad that Andy Reid takes him out of the game to call some play. Again, I thought all those runs with Pacheco were worthless last night. But he calls, some play. Pacheco fumbles the ball. Kelce's mad. He's not in the game. He goes up to the coach, says something about it, trying to get his attention. I mean, they go back and forth a little bit, and then there's going to be guys come in, break it up. This is the NFL. It's not like he hauled off and freaking cold-cocked him in the face. I just did not think it was a big deal at all. Like, I think Antonio Brown stripping and throwing his clothes off and running off the field, that I think is a big deal. But the idea of there being some sort of incident on the sideline between Travis Kelce and Andy Reid, it would have been one thing if it was Brock Purdy, a guy who's in his second year who really hasn't done much in the NFL compared to everybody else. But, I mean, these are two Hall of Famers. They've been together for 10 years. And then not only that, after the game, both guys were like water under the bridge, not a big deal. I love him. He loves me. This is how arguments happen, folks. Conflict is a thing, especially there on the football field. So the amount of just crying and, oh, my God, how dare Travis Kelce? I don't have a problem with that. You know what I have a problem with? I have a problem with the Chief player. I think it was L'Jarius Sneed, who, there's a little, something or another going on between him and the 49er player. And then all of a sudden, as the backup referee runs on the field, he just slaps him in the face mask, gets a 15-yard penalty. I got a problem with that because that's hurting my football team right there. But as far as Andy Reid and as far as Andy Reid and Kelsey getting into it, that's football. I didn't think that there was anything to that rose to the level of discussion of, oh, wow, we really need to sit down and talk about this. Again, I usually know what most of the top stories are when it comes to breaking down a football game or, whatever's a big off-the-field story, or I have a pretty good idea what everybody cares about. And I originally had this story, tucked right into the end of an hour, which is usually not our longest segments. I had it, kind of tucked in there. Like, I guess, we'll talk about it. And I know some people are worked up about this, but I couldn't give two poops about Travis Kelce pushing Andy Reid. And yet the outrage of people, the outrage. Even Andrew Marchand at The Athletic, who's a sports media writer, he broke down the CBS broadcast, and he got on CBS for not covering that shove on the sidelines or that disagreement on the sidelines more. And I was like, did we need more context to that? Was there something more to it? And another thing, I'm going to be completely honest with, if the guy wasn't dating Taylor Swift, I don't think anybody would care. And so because I don't care about him dating Taylor Swift, I guess I don't get caught up in the sanctity of the NFL. How dare he? Again, it wasn't like he pushed a referee. It wasn't like he smoked Andy Reid with a sucker punch. It isn't like, they had to be held back Steve Wilkos on the Jerry Springer show style. It's not like any of that. Tom Brady and Bill O'Brien are incredibly close. And there was a game against Washington where Brady and Bill O'Brien were screaming at each other's faces and had to be broken up by Brian Hoyer, Bill Belichick, and Aaron Hernandez. Like, we can survive on this, folks. It's not the end of the world. And so, and the best part, too, was Reid was asked about it, like, everywhere. Because, you're the Super Bowl winning coach and you got to go do every interview. So you go on with Chris Berman and you go on with NFL Network and you go on with CBS on the field and you go on. And he was asked by all of them. And he's just laughing it off like, yeah, no, this is this football. I mean, again, I'm sure we're going to get calls and texts that are like, Jared, the double standard, if this had happened, because A.J. Brown put out there, if I did this, I'd get kicked out of the league. And I'm like, A.J., when is the last time anything bad happened to you in this league? Throws a temper tantrum, gets his way out of town, and gets $125 million. Then he throws another temper tantrum this year. And it's not like they're thinking about firing him. They're thinking about firing the coach. So when has AJ ever done something bad and been punished for it in the NFL? Never. So if A.J. Brown had done that, it'd be the same as Travis Kelce doing it, which is up. There goes that superstar player on the sideline. But the difference is that A.J. doesn't have a decade of none of this drama off the field at all. No egos, no selfishness, none of that. He doesn't have any of that. Kelsey's got 10 years of goodwill built up. It's not a big deal, and I just don't understand how some of you think it is. 615-737-1025, what Andy said and what Kelsey said about it. We'll get to that next, and a lot of you want to weigh in, so of course that's what we'll do. Let's talk about Window Nation. That's right. I absolutely love Window Nation. I have Window Nation coming out to my house tomorrow. That's right. We got to check out about some of these windows, and they're going to show me exactly how great they do the job, which I'm very excited about because right now it's rainy and it's gooey and it's murky outside, and pretty soon it's going to be hot. And it's going to be cold, and it's going to be hot, and I think there's a winter weather advisory that may be upcoming for certain parts of our listening area, and that can really cause problems with your home. Because if you've got windows that need replacing, and like anything in your home, eventually everything's got its own shelf life. So if you've got windows you need to replace, you want to do that now. There's so many reasons why. First of all, you can get discolorment if the sun is coming through and it hits the floor, or you don't want any of that. Plus, at the same time, your energy bills will go up if your windows cannot protect you from the outdoor elements. So let Window Nation take care of those windows today. That's right, windownation.com. And here's their offer. 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. With proven quality and service, it's no wonder why thousands have trusted Window Nation. Again, that's 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. Don't miss out. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com.
Early in the game, the offense wasn't quite clicking, and we saw Trav come over and, I'd say, have an engaging conversation with you. What was that convo about? Because it seemed like the offense and everybody changed after that. What was that convo about?
He caught me when I wasn't looking.
I saw that. It's a fumble. That was another turnover.
Yeah, he didn't know
that. Your play sheet.
He didn't know I was going to go that far. You know?
Right.
So he came over and gave me a hug. So sorry about that. But he, you know what? He just wants to be on the field and he wants to play. And so there's nobody I get better than I get him. He's a competitive kid, and he loves to play, and he makes me feel young. But my balance is terrible, Booger.
when you and Andy Reid had that, what I call a very engaging conversation.
Oh, you guys saw that?
What was the conversation about?
There were a few cameras.
I mean, was it, hey, I need the ball, I can help us win? What was that about?
Man, it was, I'm gonna keep it between us unless my mic'd up tells the world, but I was just telling him how much I love him.
No, but for real, though, I mean, that moment right there, that speaks to the team that we are.
Right.
Everybody loves it. Everybody loves the game, wants to compete. And Coach Reid wants to compete.
Yeah.
If you watch out, you might get a little bit too. So I mean, that's just the type of mentality we've always had. And that's why we can win games like we won today.
The Chiefs say it's not a big deal. And quite frankly, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'll just go along with it and say it's not a big deal. But I don't think it was a big deal. The shoving on the sideline. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter says, I don't ever see Nick Saban or Bill Belichick getting shoved on the sideline. Well, what about Bill Parcells? Parcells fits in that class, right? It's Hall of Famer. You know how we dumped Gatorade on the coach? Do you guys know the story of how that happened? Ian, do you know the story of how we started dumping Gatorade on the coach?
I don't think I do.
So Jim Burt was a nose tackle for the New York Giants back in the day. And after the NFC Championship game against Washington, Burt was so mad at Bill Parcells for the way that Bill Parcells had treated him over the course of the season that Jim Burt decided he was going to embarrass Bill Parcells on TV by taking the Gatorade cooler and dumping it on him. That's how that started. Now, again, I don't think that with Travis Kelce and Andy Reid, it was any deep-seated resentment for Kelce to come over and freak out about how they might lose the Super Bowl because he thinks Andy Reid's not coaching right. But even then, you say that doesn't happen to these great coaches. That's Bill Parcells. Give me a break. Give me a freaking break. People are all worked up. Texter says, screw that, Jared. You do not put your hands on the coach. How would you feel if Vrabel had pushed you at that press conference? That comes from Jack in Kentucky. So I've actually seen Vrabel push a player before. Now, I didn't have a problem with it, but I think this was a joint practice against the Patriots, and there was a little scuffle in the corner or something, and Tajay Sharp came running off that sideline like, all right, I'm getting in there. I'm going to go fight. And I think that was kind of how Tajay Sharp was. And Vrabel just comes over and just shoves Tajay Sharp back onto the sideline and told him to stay there. I didn't have a problem with that. Should I have a problem with that? Now, to your point about, how would I have felt if Vrabel had done that in a press conference? I mean, I guess he's entitled to do whatever he wants to do. Now, if the head coach of the football team is going to, throw a right hook at me over something that I said on the radio or something I asked in a press conference, then I'm probably going to end up suing that coach. And that's why those coaches don't do that. But I don't think, I wouldn't sue Vrabel or press charges or anything like that if Vrabel shoved me. He and I got in a conversation and he shoved me or whatever. I don't think I would do something like that. But I probably wouldn't. I probably wouldn't make that big of a deal of it. I mean, we talk about it on the radio a lot, so you guys would think that that's making a big deal of it. But that's all anybody would want to talk about that day anyways. But I don't think that would be that big of a deal. I did laugh my tush off last night when, these memes were going around of Kelce yelling at Reid. And one of them said on it, if you call me Ma'auto one more time. I laughed so hard when I saw that. I do actually like the Mahomes and Ma'auto commercial. The other ones, not so much. And I think that Jake from State Farm, if you do a little research on this guy's background, he might be one of the most despicable people out there from what I've been told. But I do think that the Mahomes and the Ma'auto commercial, I do like that one. I think it's pretty funny. Texter says the Kelce shove was surprising in the moment, but Andy didn't look too fazed and like he was okay with it. Bingo. I don't want to do what Joe does. Like when Vrabel came out and had those comments at New England, and then I asked aloud, didn't even say it was a big deal. I asked aloud if it was a big deal, to which Ian said it wasn't a big deal, by the way. And so Joe comes up, I think this is the biggest nothing burger there ever was. And then Joe writes a column about how Vrabel got fired, like a behind the scenes, and apparently that pissed the owner off pretty bad. So I'm not going to be like Joe and say just because I don't think it's a big deal that it absolutely isn't a big deal, because it is a big deal, because everybody wants to weigh in on this. But I don't see why a lot of people want to make this a big deal. Texture says the only difference between calling Odell Beckham Jr. a baby for his antics and Kelsey is that Kelsey and the Chiefs win, so nobody cares and they make excuses for it. No. The difference is that Odell Beckham takes his entire team to Miami the week of a playoff game, so their focus is not on the playoff game. The difference is that Odell Beckham alienates his quarterback. Travis Kelsey doesn't do any of that. Even the way they handled it after the game. And again, they won, so it's not like, what's this going to do in the locker room? But, I mean, we played the cut. Does it not sound like both guys don't care? And it's like, yeah, that's just what happens in football. Like, we call people out for bull crap all the time on this show. Ian, you think it's really a problem between Kelsey and Andy Reid at this point?
No.
There's no. So it's not the same as Odell Beckham. Odell Beckham does things that hurt his team, that alienates his quarterback. Kelsey doesn't do those things. It's unbelievable. Texter into the text line says, A.J. Brown made the Travis Kelsey Andy Reid beef about race. I don't think he did. I saw A.J.'s Twitter, and it just said if I did that, I'd be thrown out of the league. Now, I didn't check A.J.'s Twitter again, but I don't think that's, again, you guys, this thing is so ridiculous. The idea that, again, Travis Kelsey gets up in Andy Reid's face and he gets mad at him for a play call, which I agree with was stupid. And I think Kelsey should have been on the field more than Kelsey was on the field last night. And it's just not a big deal. We see guys argue on the sidelines all the time. And now we want to make it so much bigger than it is because, well, quite frankly, the guy's dating Taylor Swift. That's why. I mean, I got someone in there's like, I hate Kelsey. He's got such a punchable face. He's such a prick. Is it that, or is it that you don't like him because he did COVID shot commercials and he's dating Taylor Swift? Because sometimes I think that's what that's about. Travis was disrespectful, one texter says. If I had done that to my dad, I can't imagine what would have been done to me. Well, some people's parents don't overreact when it's a heat of the moment thing and it's like, whoa, everybody calm down, everybody chill out. I just don't think it's a big deal. I don't think it's like shoving a referee. I don't think it's like fighting with the other team. I don't think it's challenging his authority. I don't think it's any of that. I think that, Troy Aikman went bonkers one time on the sidelines at Barry Switzer, and I don't think Troy Aikman's a bad guy. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Again, a lot of you want to weigh in on that at 615-737-1025 here on our program. I do have another thought that I want to get to, that I am actually interested to hear how you all felt about the broadcast last night. We'll get to that next. And your phone, Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025, 1025-1063 The Game.
First and goal. Mahomes flings it. It's there! Hardman! Jackpot! Kansas City!
And this was the Andy Reid special. This was the Andy Reid special we talked about. He was saving all day. He's going to fake a motion to go across. And at that moment, he turns and goes back. Hardman, who they didn't have, right? And they go get Hardman and bring him back. And the game-winning drive of Mahomes' career, he's been waiting for. He's won Super Bowls, but he's never had it in an overtime. He is the best. He is the standard. Your Michael Jordan wins it again.
That was the final call last night from Jim Nantz and Tony Romo. And boy, Tony Romo is getting barbecued for yesterday's performance. I actually didn't think Romo was that bad, but Andrew Marchand writes in The Athletic, quote, on the final call to end Super Bowl 58 over the Super Bowl 58 overtime classic between the Chiefs and the 49ers. I'd be a little easy on the word classic there, but I digress. Romo and play-by-play partner Jim Nantz's lack of teamwork showed up at the worst time. At first, Romo did a fine job with the Chiefs down 3 points inside the 5-yard line late in overtime, explaining that it did not matter as viewers watched the clock wind down towards 0 because the game would not end and would roll into a second quarter of overtime. But Romo kept talking too long. This blocked Nantz from properly setting up the final play as the winning touchdown was scored. Romo first muttered in the background of Nantz's call as if he were a Yahoo on local radio. After Nantz finished, Romo started in, this was the Andy Reid special, and then on. For 30 seconds, as CBS showed reaction, Romo talked about the play when the best analysis would have been silence, which would have allowed the crowd and pictures to tell the story. It should have been Nantz's broadcast moment, if anyone's. It continues on about how, basically the story was Nantz wasn't great, but, whatever. But the big issue between the broadcast was Nantz and Romo. As he finishes up talking about Romo, he just needed to get out of the way and allow Nantz to make his complete call and then wait until after the pictures and sound had their moment to note that Mahomes is Michael Jordan. It wasn't time for the gunslinger. CBS had the right plan, and Nantz and Romo executed at times, but on the biggest play of the season, Romo freelanced and lost. And here's my thing. I did not think CBS did a good job last night. I was very disappointed by CBS's broadcast. But my problem last night was not with Romo, it was with Nantz. And I don't say that lightly because I think Jim Nantz is a slam dunk, all-time great play-by-play guy in American sports history, right? Like, he was the voice of the Final Four for 30 years and did a decent job. He's been on CBS as long as I've been watching football. And there is something about Jim Nantz. When he walks in to do a 3:25 CBS broadcast on a fall Sunday, it's almost like it's a Patriots, Tom Brady, Steelers game, and he walks into the booth, and it's just, this is a great day for some wonderful football on CBS. It's like, oh, yes, Jim Nantz. But I thought Nantz was terrible. I mean, there was the one play where George Kittle on 4th down sticks the ball out, and Jim Nantz goes, and he's going to be short. And he clearly wasn't short. And even Tony was like, no, he's not. And it's bad when you're getting corrected by Tony. Then there was a moment, I want to say before the half, where Andy Reid was jawing at an official. And Jim Nantz just goes, Gene, what do you think he's talking about to him there? It's like, what is Gene Steratore supposed to say to that? I don't know. It could be one of 10 billion things Andy Reid's mad about. How the hell would Gene know that? It's like setting Gene up to look like an idiot. Because you ask Gene, what does he think? And Gene's like, I don't know. That's like saying, oh, those two people over in the corner are jawing at each other about something. What's it about? I don't know. I mean, they're jawing in the corner at the supermarket. I've been to the supermarket before, so I know how the supermarket works. Just like Gene's been a ref before, so Gene knows. But Gene has no idea what they're talking about. And it's like he set up one of his partners to fail. And then, I don't know if you guys noticed this, when Jawan Jennings threw the touchdown pass to Christian McCaffrey, Nantz, as they were going to break, was like, and he did this before on an SEC game on CBS, throwing a Hail Mary at Tennessee against Georgia. Jim, he didn't throw it. He caught it. Somebody else threw it. For Jim Nantz, that's a big screw up. And again, this is holding Jim Nantz and CBS to the standard with which we hold them to, which is at the top. I mean, I always think of that CBS is the model for consistency. But what Nantz and Romo have turned into, they've really kind of turned into that Amazon Thursday night crew that I really had high hopes for when they started. But the truth is Al Michaels rather be anywhere else calling any other game on the slate because the Thursday night games are crap and he's not even on TV. He's streaming and he knows it. So he'd much rather be somewhere else. It's almost like you listen to Al Michaels call a Thursday night game, and unless it's Dallas or somebody like that, Al's sitting there in the booth with a cloud over his head like, for 40 years I called great football, and now here I am calling the Titans. And then there's Kirk Herbstreit, who's really a college guy. And so, like, you know, it's like they kind of just, they don't totally jive. Like, it's just not a, that's what Nantz and Romo have become. I mean, it's bad. And 5 years ago, they weren't that. How did they go from 5 years ago being the gold standard of NFL broadcast to, again, it was passable? But you can't tell me you wouldn't have gotten a better effort out of Ian Eagle and somebody else calling that game last night. And so maybe the reason why I'm kind of pointing the finger at Nantz today instead of Romo is because my expectations for Nantz are much higher than they are for Romo. Like I was even, you know, I don't know if I've ever done the Jim Nantz and Tony Romo impersonation on the air. But when I do, it's always like it's so crisp, it's so precise, it's so just well done and classy when it comes from Jim Nantz. And then you got Tony kind of going off like a buffoon. It's a big 3rd down and 11. Brady, he's got Edelman. It's a gain of 31 for the Patriots, and it's a 1st down. Oh, Jim, I can't believe it. Oh, God. It's like Nantz, classy. Tony, a little reckless. But for some reason, when Tony was able to call out the plays before they happened, it was magic. And now, again, it's like the Thursday night Amazon crew that, quite frankly, rather be anywhere else. And for the Super Bowl, that's not good enough. Now, Tracy Wolfson on the sideline is great. And Gene, who my only problem with him throughout the course of the year is I think he covers for the officials too much. Gene and Tracy are fine. We do not need a field goal kicking expert on these games. Sorry to Jay Feely, but I think he adds nothing when he does the game as an analyst, and I certainly don't need him as a kicking analyst in a big game. But I was disappointed by CBS. I expect a little more out of them. And I also don't really like how they have 97 people on their pregame show anymore. You know, it used to just be a JB, Coach, Boomer, and now it's JB, Coach, Nate, Phil, Boomer, Johnny, Joey, Coach, Jimmy. There's too many people. Freaking J.J. Watt. It's like, I don't know. I'm disappointed with CBS is what I would say, which I am not used to. Texter says the Nickelodeon stream was absolutely more entertaining than the CBS one. I'm not going to watch Nickelodeon for a game. Like, I'm not going to watch Nickelodeon for the Super Bowl. Sorry. I don't do all those extra broadcasts and things like that. And I know there's a market for it. Like, I know that every 40-year-old guy who went to a fraternity in the South freaking loses their pants every week that the Manning brothers are doing a broadcast. That's not me. I'll listen to Joe and Troy. And I think Joe and Troy are the best in the business. And it is a shame that ESPN does not have a Super Bowl for a couple of years because Joe and Troy should be doing them. But if I had to rank it right now, Joe and Troy are the clear number one. I think of the Tirico and Collinsworth are number 2, though I'm not a huge Tirico guy, and Collinsworth can be a little annoying. Burkhart and Olsen, I think, are ahead of Romo and Nantz. And I can't believe I'm saying that because I'm not even a Greg Olsen fan. But next year when Brady's in there, it's going to be hard for me not to just love every single thing. Texter into the text line says the hate on Nance and Romo is ridiculous. It would would take all of the CBS teams over ESPN, Fox, or NBC teams on TV. Anyone is better than Joe Buck and Greg Olson. I mean, come on. Really? I mean, I'm sorry. I think Joe and Troy are the gold standard because it's not a three-man booth, so there's enough room to talk. But what Joe and Troy have that I'm not sure the others have is Joe and Troy are friends. You know, Michaels and Collinsworth had this, and I think Tirico's fine because he's a pro's pro, but I do think that the NBC broadcast has dropped off a little bit because of this. But, like, Joe and Troy converse during the games. So Troy's analysis is almost like, you know, the two guys are talking, and here's Troy Aikman, a Hall of Fame quarterback, that's kind of breaking the play down. The other thing that Joe and Troy do that the others won't do, in Olson and Burkhardt's case, I think it's because they're too young and they're not really grandfathered in. In Herb Street's case, it's because he's not an NFL guy, and I think he's still trying to kind of like claim an NFL spot for some reason. Romo, I think, is probably too stupid to be able to do this, but Joe and Troy will chuck people under the bus. Like, they do not care. If they think you're screwing up, if you're a coach, if you're a player, if you're a referee, they do not care. They do not care if the team will get mad at them. They do not care if the referees will get mad at them. They do not care if the league will get mad at them. And because they've been doing it for so long and they make so much money, it's like, they're kind of grandfathered in here. You want to go back to the days of the Booger Mobile, or are you going to suck it up and deal with Troy saying something you don't like? And that's the one thing that they'll do. To say you take all the CBS teams, I do think this. I think Ian Eagle is ready for a number one job. And he's not going to get it with CBS because Nance is basically the brand, right? The Masters, football. Now, he's given up basketball, but the fact that for 30 years he was the Masters, football, and basketball at CBS, he is the brand. So they're not going to put Ian Eagle ahead of him. But I do think Ian Eagle is ready for a number one job. And I don't know whose number one job it would be. If I were Amazon, and I love Al Michaels, but if I were Amazon, Michaels' deal is up after next year, I probably would be courting Ian Eagle to be the voice of Amazon Thursday Night Football. And I would put him with somebody who's more of an NFL guy than Herb Street. But don't tell me you would take all of the CBS crews over Joe Buck. What are we talking about?
That's where Troy Aikman, I think, him being out of the league as long as he doesn't know these guys as much. So I wonder, Greg Olson, he knows these guys personally more so. I wonder if that affects how they call the game.
I think that Tony, when he was right out of it, like one of the theories about Romo is the reason why he can't call out the plays anymore is because he's now been out of the league for 6 or 7 years, so he's not as in tune with the plays. I don't know if that's true or not.
Mm-hmm. I guess I could buy that.
But I think there's something to it, to your point of like, again, what do Joe and Troy have that all these other teams don't? I mean, they've been together for forever. Like, they've been together, I want to say, since 2005, and they did 1 year with Collinsworth in the booth as the number one crew of 3 guys. They got rid of Collinsworth, and it's been them. So they've been together for 20 years. Like, that is not nothing. I mean, that is real chemistry. One texter into the text line says that Phil and Boomer won't be back and it's time for them to hang it up. Phil and Boomer are not the problem on the CBS pre- and post-game shows for me. My problem is Cower. I think, and J.J. Watt, but I think Cower is terrible. First of all, I think Bill Cower should have never been put into the Hall of Fame. I think it's an embarrassment that Bill Cower is in the Hall of Fame. I got a lot of Hall of Fame thoughts, by the way, that I do want to get to at some point today. But I think Cower is awful, and I think Watt is awful, and what the hell was going on with his head yesterday? Did you see the J.J. Watt haircut?
I heard about it, yeah.
He looked like he was trying out for NSYNC. I'm like, what is going on with that man's head? 615-737-1025. So add that to the list. Again, we got the game. We got the CBS, and now we've also got the Reed and Kelsey that everybody's all worked up about. Stillman and Company. Oh, and Joe Rexroad's all mad at me already today. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025, 1025-1063 The Game.
But this is it. 3rd and 4. Use your legs. You saw him use it earlier with that spatial awareness, but you've got to go ahead and get a motion to get your best players off of their best players. Right now, their 2 best defenders are guarding your 2 best wide receivers.
McCaffrey in motion. They fake the handoff to him. Chiefs in on Purdy so fast he had to just unload it. So the drive stalls at the Chiefs' 5-yard line, and it was Chris Jones who really broke up the play, wrecked it.
I want you to watch him. This is for the Super Bowl. Because Chris Jones comes through. Watch on the bottom. Jennings wins for the Super Bowl right down there. But there's no time because Chris Jones does it again like he did to Josh Allen in the divisional.
There you go. Tony Romo forgot the rules in overtime, saying, oh, that was for the Super Bowl. No, Tony, no, it wasn't, because Kansas City would get the ball back. And while it's truly inconceivable that Tony Romo could forget the overtime rules, even for just a second, given that he makes $18 million to call that game, I am stunned by how many fans do not know the overtime rules for the playoffs. And I'm not talking about like casual fans that don't really watch football and, oh, this is the Super Bowl. But I'm talking about like diehard fans last night that were tweeting me that were like, you take the ball in overtime because when you get the ball in overtime, you take it and go score a touchdown, you win the game. Not in 2024. Not in 2023, and also not in 2022. Just happened to be that way when the Bills, I guess technically the 2022 playoffs, were when they decided to change the rule because Buffalo didn't get the football back after they blew the lead with 13 seconds to go, and then Kansas City got to kick off in the divisional round of the playoffs and scored, and Josh Allen never got a chance to shoot back in that unbelievable Wild West duel between those two. And how many people out there didn't know those rules? This is the NFL. Whenever they change a major rule in the NFL, no, it's not like some little small rule like, oh, yeah, now you have to report as eligible and be outside the tackle and shade the – it's not that. But when they change a major rule in the NFL, I expect the audience of this show to know that, right? Like, you're going out of your way to listen to sports radio, so you care. That was a major story. It's like when they allowed pass interference to be reviewable and when they took that away. Like, you should know that stuff. That's a big story. It's a big deal. It's a big rule. And I was stunned by the amount of people that didn't know the rules yesterday, including the 49er players, which I just thought was wild to me last night, how many people didn't know those rules. One texter says, I still wish Kevin Harlan would do TV, but I do agree with you, Jared, about Joe and Troy, and I have talked to other people about it, and I was surprised by how many of them agree too. Joe Buck hate seems to be largely overblown. That comes from Dylan in Antioch. I went through a stage where I was kind of indifferent on Joe Buck. But I don't think I've ever hated Joe Buck. Then I read Joe Buck's book, and now I really like Joe Buck. But one texter says the World Series isn't the same without Joe Buck, and I agree. The Fox, they've got this Joe Davis calling it. He's like a robot broadcaster. You know, like his voice is like he's trying too hard to be some great broadcaster. It's like, buddy, Vin Scully just let it fly. Like, you don't need to every time make everybody think that every game is the World Series when it is a June contest between the Orioles and the Red Sox. It'll be okay. Texter says, I knew the rules about the back and forth, but I did not know the clock rules. And Jim Nantz and Tony Romo just casually mentioning the first quarter of overtime with 10 seconds left blew my mind that they didn't mention it earlier. So I do understand that. Now, I just assumed that the clock didn't really matter. But as I brought up, when they say we're starting a new game, I do wonder, okay, so let's say it was the end of the second overtime. Do we take a TV timeout and then all of a sudden San Francisco is kicking off to Kansas City, and if Kansas City scores, they win the game? But I don't know the answer to that. And I'm not sure that there is an answer for that because I'm not sure that we would expect to go without a score for a half. But I guess it is possible. I don't ever expect that to happen, but I do understand, reinforcing the clock. I can't believe Tony Romo's like, this was for the Super Bowl on that one play to Jennings. Oof. Texture says, I looked at J.J. Watt's hair, and I was thinking that he looked like he just woke up. And then when they showed Carrot Top at the Super Bowl, I could not stop thinking about your comments about how he looked at Radio Row last week. Did they show Carrot Top, Ian? I didn't see Carrot Top.
I did not see him.
And I know I would have seen Carrot Top because you all heard me when it came to Carrot Top last week when I saw him walking around Radio Row, and he looked like he had just gotten out of a car accident and was addicted to something. And, I mean, he just looked like, oof. Like, just even thinking about it makes me a little nauseous right now. So I guess Carrot Top was at the game, but I know I would have noticed it because I couldn't stop staring at Carrot Top the other day because of how bad Carrot Top – I mean, he looks terrible. Like, it's almost the kind of thing where I almost wanted to say, Mr. Top, do you need help? No, just as a friend, just wondering. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Coming up next here on the program, do not lose sight of what we learned yesterday in the Super Bowl. And just because it's the biggest takeaway doesn't mean the other takeaways don't exist. But this Super Bowl was about one guy. We'll do that next here on Stillman and Company. White Bison, they are your local coffee shop. That's right. If you're somebody who, I mean, what was crazy in Vegas was seeing how many people were lined up for coffee at like the chain coffee shops. It's like, you know, the local coffee is incredible. And that's what White Bison gives you here in town. Stay swarm and cozy with their new honey-based drinks, like a cinnamon beehive latte, or an iced honey nut macchiato, or the vanilla rooibos tea latte. White Bison is your local coffee shop with food featuring premium, fresh-made breakfast, lunch, and snack options. So download the Twice Daily app and order ahead. And when you download the Twice Daily and White Bison app, you can enroll in the rewards program so you can place orders on the go anytime and automatically earn on every purchase. Download the app to order ahead, earn rewards, and get one free coffee every time you buy 7. That's part of White Bison's Buy 7, Get 1 Free. White Bison and Twice Daily, fresh all day. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. On the first day of the off-season, I saw that somebody said that we've got like 149 days until the college football season kicks off in Dublin, Ireland. I guess Georgia Tech is playing somebody in Ireland. And that'll be the kickoff to start the season, 149 days. Are we going to be able to make that? No football for 7 months, and no, the spring leagues, the UFL, that doesn't count.
We do it every year. We can make it.
We do it some way, somehow. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt my heart to know that we don't have football for a while. So last night I was complaining about Kyle Shanahan, who I thought completely blew the game. And I thought that the big takeaway from Super Bowl 58 was not about Patrick Mahomes and how he's now won 3 and he's on the Tom Brady path, which I think is absolutely worth discussing. And it's not about Andy Reid, who is, again, starting to kind of make a dent in the all-time coaches discussion. You know, he's not there yet, but, again, starting to make a little bit of a dent here or there. But I thought that the game was pretty much all about Kyle Shanahan and about how for the third time in the last 10 years, Kyle Shanahan has had a 10-point lead in the Super Bowl and blown it. About how Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco over the last 4 years has had 3 10-point leads in the conference championship game or Super Bowl, and in all 3 of those instances has not won. And just how sad and pathetic that is. And how, again, he cannot win in the big games. But I was tweeting about that last night, about how Shanahan blew it. And not only did Shanahan blow it, but he did stupid things, right? Like taking the ball to start overtime, when strategically you're not supposed to do that with our new overtime rules. Again, by the way, the new overtime rules that somebody called Ian and said, I think that guy on the radio is wrong about those overtime rules. I'm like, no. They changed them. We all saw it. We remember it. Each team gets the ball. But what somebody tweeted me last night kind of stuck with me when they said, I can't believe that after a game for the ages that you would have that opinion about this game being all about Kyle Shanahan. And I stopped for a second and I thought, game for the ages? Nah. Look, last night's Super Bowl was entertaining, and it was a close game, and we almost never get overtime Super Bowls, and so that is exciting. But I wouldn't say that last night's game was a game for the ages, was an all-time Super Bowl. I think it was, quite frankly, kind of like most of the rest of the Super Bowls, that it matters to those teams and those fans, but it wasn't a barn burner, remember it, talk about it forever, never forget it kind of Super Bowl, right? Like, for instance, when the Steelers beat the Seahawks in Detroit, that wasn't a game for the ages. That was just a regular run-of-the-mill Super Bowl. Like, it was a big game. It was a good game. There was a champion who was crowned, and on we went with our lives. When Tom Brady comes back from a 28-3 deficit and wins the Super Bowl, that's a game for the ages. The 2 giant Super Bowls against the Patriots, with the David Tyree helmet catch or Mario Manningham along the sideline. The first one, which knocked out an undefeated team, the first possible undefeated team of the Super Bowl era. Those are games for the ages. Malcolm Butler's interception, game for the ages. But like Rams-Bengals a couple of years ago, didn't think that was really a game for the ages. Now, there are some games that have historical context to them. So Tom Brady versus the Rams, because that was Brady's first Super Bowl, that one becomes a huge, huge game. Because we remember that in history as the moment that Tom Brady really broke through. I don't think this game's going to have those kind of future ramifications to them. Brady Mahomes in the Super Bowl in the COVID year. I don't think that game was necessarily compelling in terms of the end result and, sitting on the edge of your seat. But we'll look back at that and say that was Brady versus Mahomes in the Super Bowl. The two greatest played each other, and Tom Brady's team came out on top. But Scott Norwood wide right, that's a game for the ages. Hell, the one around here, it has a name. It's called 1 Yard Short. And everybody knows what Super Bowl you're talking about when you say 1 yard short. Everybody knows what Super Bowl you're talking about when you say Philly special. Those are games for the ages. Last night was a good game. It was entertaining. It was close. There's a lot of different things to kind of talk about here and there, whether it's Shanahan or Mahomes or Andy Reid or Kelsey and Reed or McCaffrey or Brock Purdy or that horrible injury to Jere Greenlaw. Like, there's a lot of different things that happen, but it's a Super Bowl that we'll look back on and say, man, remember that, how unbelievable that game was? Again, it's not Malcolm Butler popping through and intercepting the ball at the 1 yard line. So when I hear people talk about, this was an all-time classic, I'm like, an all-time classic Chiefs Super Bowl? Or an all-time classic Super Bowl? Because I don't really think that this was Joe Montana versus the Bengals. It was a good Super Bowl. It was fine. I mean, I'm not going to get up here and rank the Super Bowls, but I feel like I know a game for the ages when I see one. Like, I know when a game isn't, this will be one that we talk about for forever. This will be like those Mahomes versus Burrow duels in the AFC title game back. That's special. This past year in the AFC Championship game, I have to think off the top of my head. I'm like, who did Kansas City? Oh, yeah, Baltimore. Not a game for the ages. Baltimore and the Giants. Trent Dilfer at quarterback. Not a game for the ages. So, again, the guy on Twitter last night was talking about how good that Super Bowl was. And I was like, it was fine. We don't have to live in the moment. We don't have to, well, we do need to live in the moment, but we don't have to be a prisoner of the moment, of the right now, and just, this is the biggest, baddest, greatest, yes. We don't have to do that. And I'm not doing that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Mahomes and Brady. Because Mahomes, even though I think the big storyline, even though I think Kyle Shanahan gave him the game last night, Mahomes is in rarefied air. But are we really ready to start having the Brady discussion? We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. It is Valentine's season, and love is in the air. And not just because I'm talking about Tom Brady, but because I'm telling you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Find your perfect match this month with Hiller. Get a free UV light when you purchase select new HVAC systems, and get a free whole home surge protection when you buy a new whole home generator. Or get 50% off of a descaler when you buy a new tankless water heater. You'll never be more in love with your home. Find your perfect match at happyhiller.com. Again, I use Hiller at my home. I had Hiller at my home today. And, I mean, they were here for most of the morning. And I needed them, and they brought two dudes in here, and they freaking got after it, and I am so freaking glad they did. They take great care of me. They will do the exact same for you. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
Are you also chasing the quarterback greats of this game? Because there's been so much discussion about now Mahomes in there with Brady. You got to hear some of it.
Yeah, I hear it. I mean, to me, it's always going to be tough because Brady beat me in the Super Bowl. That's one thing you'll always have in my head. But it gives me something to strive for every single day is chasing greatness. And whenever I'm tired, I might not want to work out. I know that I have to do it in order to be in these moments like this. And so I know it's a long ways away. And it's not something that I'm like, I need to get 7 Super Bowls right now. But it does give me that added motivation to continue to be great every single day.
I do love this. How much do you think it sticks up Mahomes' craw that Brady beat him in that Super Bowl?
A little bit, obviously, brought it up there.
Even though they didn't have any tackles in that game and the Buccaneers just overwhelmed them and doesn't matter. Mahomes is incredibly self-aware. So Mahomes versus Brady is about to become the next thing. It is going to be the next great sports argument. Remember the old sports arguments, the greatest hits? LeBron versus Michael Jordan? Who's better, LeBron or Michael? Let's talk about it. But it seems as these chapters continue to get written that all of a sudden we kind of come to pretty strong consensus right? For instance, I think now, because it seems pretty obvious that LeBron will not win 6 and that LeBron's championships are kind of disjointed, a couple over here with the Heat, a couple over here with the Cavs, one over here with the Lakers. It's like, well, LeBron's got, he's good and he's got all these records but he wasn't the dominant player that Michael was. So that's kind of over, right? Like, I think most people, except for Shannon Sharp, seem to all kind of believe that Michael Jordan's greatest basketball player ever lived. So that debate's kind of over. The Brady Manning debate, that was a great debate when I was a kid. Manning had all the MVPs and racked up all the stats, and Tom Brady won championships. And then they would meet, and then half the time Brady would win, half the time Manning would win, and those games were classics. And then Brady won 6 Super Bowls, and I think at one point, I want to say Brady had 4. When Manning got his second, it was like, it's over. There's not much of a discussion there. Remember Brady or Belichick? Who was more important? Again, that's been written. But right now, the next great sports debate is going to be Brady versus Mahomes. Now, I do not see how you can look at last night's game and the 3 Super Bowls and say Mahomes ahead of Brady. For starters, Brady did beat Mahomes. And not only did Brady beat Mahomes in the Super Bowl, Brady beat Mahomes the year before on the road in Arrowhead again, we're talking about game for the ages, in an instant classic AFC title game. In overtime. An all-time great one. So Brady's 2-0 in the playoffs against Mahomes, including, again, that Super Bowl. But I didn't think last night helped Mahomes' case other than he won a 3rd Super Bowl because I thought Mahomes was good last night. I didn't think Mahomes was great. In these Super Bowls, for the most part, Tom Brady was great. Now, I know Tom Brady only threw for 143 yards in his first one. And he was still a young pup, wet behind the ears, and he was nothing like what Mahomes is statistically. But if you go back to that first Super Bowl against the Rams, on the final drive as Brady is leading them down to kick the field goal in regulation to win, John Madden says, boy, I tell you, watching Tom Brady, it gives me goosebumps. We got to know him and we've watched the tape, but seeing him in person, I mean, Madden was almost foreshadowing the great career that was upcoming for Brady. Again, last night I thought Mahomes played well. Certainly didn't do anything crazy to cost him the game. But I didn't think Mahomes was special last night. Mahomes missed a touchdown at the end of regulation. Rashee Rice is wide open in the middle of the field. Would have won the game right then and there for the Chiefs. And he missed it. Joe Montana does not miss that throw. I think the discussion for Mahomes right now should actually be more Montana than it should be Brady. Because Brady, again, has 7 Super Bowls. Hell, Brady threw for 500 yards in a Super Bowl that they lost. He threw for 500 yards. And again, Mahomes didn't have that Brady or Montana-like finish in the end of regulation. And while we're splitting hairs because Mahomes moved right down the field and scored a touchdown in overtime, my argument would be that's what happens when we're comparing you to Joe Montana and to Tom Brady. So while Brady and Mahomes will become the new MJ versus LeBron, and let me just say this, I do think that Brady versus Mahomes is a more comparable argument than Jordan and LeBron because they play the same position, and I'm not convinced that Jordan or LeBron do play the same position. Last night for Mahomes was not a Tom Brady-like Super Bowl performance. He was fine. He wasn't incredible. It's not like San Francisco couldn't have beaten him last night. They could have. They didn't even have to play out of their minds in order to win that game. They just needed to convert 1 third down at the end of the game. They had 3 third and fours they didn't convert at the end of the game? That's it. That's all they had to do. And they couldn't do it. Now, here's the real key for Tom Brady that we can't say yet about Patrick Mahomes. When it comes to Tom Brady, the only constant about Brady's 7 Super Bowls is Brady. He's the only person that was attached to all 7. He had that first group of players with a great defense of Ty Law and Lawyer Malloy and Willie McGinnis and Mike Vrabel and Teddy Bruschi and Richard Seymour. And then on offense, they had Troy Brown, and they had a good offensive line, and they had David Patton, and then they added in Deion Branch. And then the second group with Edelman and Gronk and the McCourtys and Dante Hightower, and, but it all changed, right? The only constant in New England was him and Bill. Well, then he goes to Tampa Bay, and he wins without Bill. So we can say when it comes to Brady's Super Bowls, the only reason that Brady won the Super Bowls is because of Brady. He's the common denominator. Just like when it comes to Kyle Shanahan and the crapping of the pants. The Atlanta Falcons Super Bowl, the first Kansas City San Francisco Super Bowl, the San Francisco LA NFC title game where San Francisco had that double-digit lead in the fourth quarter last night. The one constant in all of that is Kyle Shanahan. 3 different quarterbacks and those 4 crappings. He's the one constant. Well, with Mahomes, my question is, will he be able to do this without Travis Kelce, without Andy Reid, and without Chris Jones? Because those are the 3 dudes with him that really, truly matter. Now, Spagnuolo should be in there too. But we've learned that he can do it without Tyreek Hill. We've learned he can do it without a receiver, which is incredible to me because the guys he was throwing to yesterday, it might as well have been Nick Westbrook-Akina and Chris Moore. That's how bad I think Valdez-Scantling and those bums are. But when Travis Kelce goes, will they be able to get him another Travis Kelce? Or will he be able to make another guy into Travis Kelce? When Chris Jones goes, and I think Chris Jones is a slam dunk Hall of Famer, will Kansas City still be able to get the big disruptive plays on defense that we know you have to have in order to win Super Bowls? And then how much longer does Andy Reid have? I never bought into this idea that Andy Reid was on the verge of retirement. That narrative that kept coming up of, Belichick will go coach Kansas City because he's on the verge of retiring. But if Mahomes is going to win 7 Super Bowls, in which the biggest test, I think, is getting out of the conference right now, more so than it is winning the Super Bowl, because it's a conference with Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson, and C.J. Stroud is right behind right now. If he's going to be able to do that and win 7 Super Bowls, he's probably not going to have Chris Jones, Travis Kelce, and Andy Reid the rest of the way. Brady proved that he could do it without Gronk, without Troy Brown, without Bill Belichick, without Charlie Weiss, without Josh McDaniels. I don't know if Mahomes can do it without those guys. And if Mahomes can't, he probably won't get to 7. If Mahomes can, he got a pretty good shot to get to 7. And so that's the big question here. But get ready for it, because Brady versus Mahomes is the next big American sports debate. And let me say this. I think it's Brady right now, and it's not even close. 615-737-1025. We'll get to some of your phones. 615-737-1025. A lot of you want to weigh in on this, and I do think that there is, there is one thing about Mahomes that I do have to give him credit for, that I think I'm starting to see. That means, that is Brady and Manning-esque. We'll do that next here on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Great job, gentlemen. We're going to play overtime. Playoff overtime. We're going to start a new game. All replays are upstairs. Everybody will have 3 timeouts. All right? Both teams will have an opportunity to score or opportunity to possess unless the first team possesses a defensive score. All right, any questions? San Francisco, you are still the visitors. What is your call?
Tails again.
He called tails again. It is tails. You want the ball. Which way do you want to kick? San Francisco will receive first in overtime. Good luck, gentlemen.
With overtime coming up at Super Bowl 58, you might be wondering just strategically, since each team is guaranteed a possession, do you want the football first?
It's a very tough one because you always want to be like, well, I want to be able to go for it on 4th down and know what it is, right? If I have to score, get a field goal, that's an advantage. However, if my defense is very tired and I just got off the field, I might want to give them a break. Those are the 2 things that you're thinking in that moment because there's no conditions indoors that matter.
I saw San Francisco say they want the ball. And I was watching the game with my dad last night. I turned to him, I said, I wonder if that guy for San Francisco just went out there and said we want the ball back, or if he actually knew what the rules were, because there's no way that anybody with the right mindset would put Patrick Mahomes in a position to where Patrick Mahomes knows what he has to get in order to win the Super Bowl. There's no way you would do that. I mean, that is the craziest thing I have ever heard, and what are you doing? And no, Kyle Shanahan, he decided to do it. And here's why he decided to do it.
It's just something we talked about with, none of us have a ton of experience of it, but we went through all the analytics and talked with those guys, and we just thought it'd be better. We wanted the ball third. If both teams matched and scored, we wanted to be the ones who had the chance to go win, and we got that field goal, so we knew we had to hold them to at least to a field goal, and if we did, then we felt it was in our hands after that.
Oh, the analytics people chimed in. The analytics people. First of all, how do we have analytics on something that's never happened before? Secondly, do your analytics equate for Patrick Mahomes, an all-time great quarterback who we're comparing to Tom Brady and Joe Montana? Do we have analytics when it's him? Because it is different when it is him than when it is Desmond Ridder. There is, I don't know if you guys realize this, a difference between the two. I'll give you an example. I think I'd be okay kicking to Lamar. Again, I would still want the ball second, but I think I would be okay with that. Because it's like, okay, we scored a touchdown. Now Lamar has to score a touchdown, and it doesn't matter that they've got a kicker who can kick it from 75 yards. But this ain't Lamar. This is Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. But nope, analytics said to do it. So there's one thing that Mahomes has that Manning and Brady have that I don't think a lot of other quarterbacks have, and that is that Mahomes is winning with some straight bums at wide receiver. Like Valdez-Scantling sucks. I think Rashee Rice, it was coming along there. I didn't think he was very good yesterday in the Super Bowl. The guy who saved their bacon last year, Kadarius Toney, he wasn't even active. I mean, they got just freaking nobodies out there. Noah Gray and Justin Watson. I mean, it's Mecole Hardman, who they got up back off the scrap heap from the Jets, ends up winning the Super Bowl. I mean, that is some Manning and Brady stuff. And yes, he's got Gronk. He's got Kelsey. But Brady always had Gronk or Randy Moss or Troy Brown or somebody like that. Manning always had, one Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, or Demaryius Thomas. Like, they've always had one of those guys, but then it is how much can Peyton Manning do with Julius Thomas and Eric Decker, right? How much can Tom Brady do with Danny Amendola? And that's what Mahomes is like. That is some pretty special stuff that we see out of Mahomes. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Kenneth texts in and goes, what are your thoughts on Dan Marino? Where does he rank all time with none of these championships? Here's what I'll say about that. 4 years ago, at the Super Bowl, the first Chiefs Super Bowl, they unveiled the NFL top 100 players of all time. And I think there were 10 quarterbacks. And I think off the top of my head, there was Otto Graham, Sammy Baugh, Johnny Unitas, Roger Staubach, Joe Montana, John Elway, Dan Marino, Brett Favre, Tom Brady, and Peyton Manning. Wow, I got them. There were 10. Those were the quarterbacks. And I said this last week that if we were doing this today, I'm kicking Marino out. I'm kicking Favre out. I can't have an opinion on Sammy Baugh or Otto Graham. Like, I'm just going to have to accept that they're the guys who represent the quarterbacks of the leather helmet era. And so I'm kicking Marino out, I'm kicking Favre out, and I'm putting Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers in. And so to answer your question, Marino's out. So we don't even need to rank him. He's out. Ian, do you have a problem with that?
Marino's pretty good.
So, but we're kicking him out.
Okay.
Are you going to put him in over Mahomes?
No.
You going to put him in over Elway?
No.
You going to put him in over Staubach?
Maybe.
You're going to put him in over Roger Staubach.
I mean.
An era-defining quarterback.
Yeah. I mean.
You put him in over Montana?
No.
Manning?
No.
I mean, come on now. Like, it's just, I mean, it is what it is. Texter in the text line says, I agree with your assessment, but the signs are already there. Patrick Mahomes won without Tyreek Hill. This season, Kansas City's team was all about defense rather than scoring 40 points every game. Him winning without Andy Reid will be the true test. Let's not forget about Spagnuolo now. Because as much as we make about Kyle Shanahan blowing the game last night, and he blew it, as much as we make about that, I don't think Andy Reid coached a very good game. Too many runs on first down with Pacheco that killed drives. And I get it early in the game, but later in the game, you don't take that ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands. And he took the ball out of Mahomes' hands way too many times for my liking. Andy Reid not challenging when he burned a timeout anyways at the beginning of the third quarter. I thought that was reckless. Too many times there was a big passing down, and I'm like, where is Kelsey? Why is he not on the field? They don't have anybody else to throw to. But when it mattered, Spagnuolo dialed up the perfect pressure at the right time. And so, yeah, winning without Andy is going to be – but winning without Spagnuolo is also going to be a part of this because Spagnuolo, he might be the best big game coordinator in the history of the NFL. Texter says, if Mahomes is going to win 7 Super Bowls, then I am going to stop watching the NFL right now. I am sick, Larry says. I'm sick of the Chiefs. Well, here's what I'd say. We need to see Joe Burrow get healthy. Because Joe Burrow is the one true contemporary to Mahomes. I know we bring up Allen because those playoff games, at least the two of them were good playoff games. The first one was great. I mean, I guess the first one was that AFC title game that was kind of a blowout. But the second one was an all-time classic. The third one this year was a great playoff game. But Mahomes always beats Josh Allen in the playoffs. I think Lamar proved this year that he can't fight fire with fire when it comes to Patrick Mahomes. The real contemporary for him is Burrow. And so if the Bengals can't protect Joe Burrow and he's going to keep getting hurt every other year, then that's going to really suck. Because I really want, I really think those two were on the path of a true great all-time rivalry. And that might be the one guy who stands in the way of Mahomes getting to 7 Super Bowls. See, here's the crazy part. For all those years, the NFC would always have a new quarterback in the Super Bowl, whether it was Donovan McNabb, or it was Rex Grossman, or it was Eli Manning, or it was Aaron Rodgers, or they always had a new quarterback, Drew Brees, Russell Wilson. Every year, it was a new quarterback from the NFC. The AFC, it was Brady, Manning, Roethlisberger, and then Joe Flacco's one appearance. I am afraid that the AFC is headed down that path where it is going to be Mahomes, Burrow, and maybe one other guy. And I think it's yet to be determined who that one other guy is. I wouldn't bet on it being Will Levis. I would love for it to be Will Levis. You know who I'm really afraid it's going to be, Ian?
Who's that?
Stroud.
Yeah.
Like, I'm worried that that's the third guy here. And who knows? It's 1 year, and Carson Wentz was great after 2 years, and he's, a backup. Vince Young was Rookie of the Year. But, I do think that the AFC is kind of shaping up that way. And, poor Lamar Jackson. Because I don't think Lamar will ever be good enough to run the gauntlet of that group. He's kind of like Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers was great, but Phillip Rivers could never just get through. He beat Manning. He beat Manning in the playoffs, but he could never run through all of them. And I think that's going to happen now in the AFC. More of your phones at 615-737-1025. Plus, I've got a game ball to give out, and it's not anybody on the Chiefs, and it's not anybody on the Niners, but we got to recognize this game ball. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. If you want to weigh in, tune into 94.9 The Fan tomorrow night as Vandy's basketball team, the men's basketball team, takes on Texas A&M at home. Pre-game's at 5:30. Tip-off is at 6 with coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com.
First and goal. Mahomes flings it. It's there! Hardman! Jackpot! Kansas City!
And this was the Andy Reid special. This was the Andy Reid special we talked about. He was saving all day. He's going to fake a motion to go across. And at that moment, he turns and goes back. Hardman, who they didn't have, right? And they go get Hardman and bring him back. And the game-winning drive of Mahomes' career, he's been waiting for. He's won Super Bowls, but he's never had it in an overtime. He is the best. He is the standard. Your Michael Jordan wins it again.
That was the final call yesterday. And I got to give a game ball out to the referees. Because outside of that one horrendous spot early in the second half, I can't think off the top of my head one massive screw-up from the officials last night, including that holding call early in overtime when it looked like San Francisco was going to go 3 and out. And I was like, oh, boy, I need to see this one. If this is a ticky-tacker, no, he held him. Good call. Throw the flag. I thought they were excellent last night. And the one thing I asked before the AFC NFC championship games was whatever you do, because we've had some real screw-ups over the years, like last year with the Chiefs and the Bengals, and then, of course, that terrible ticky-tack holding call that gave the Chiefs the Super Bowl last year, and the Rams and the Saints a couple of years ago. Like, we've had some bad ones. I said, whatever you do, let the guys on the field decide the game. That's all I ask of the referees. Look, you're going to miss some calls here. You're going to have some holds there that go on, but do not blow the game. And I think last night, I think they all deserve a game ball. Every single one of those referees. There was not one massive screw-up other than the spot, which Andy Reid could have challenged, and after he went to burn the timeout, he should have challenged it. There was not one massive referee screw-up. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, Ian, were any of these games in the playoffs at all decided by the referees by a controversial call?
Nothing stands out.
I can't think of one.
No.
And
I'm sure we're missing one or two.
I mean, they didn't affect the Chiefs and the Dolphins. They didn't affect the Browns and the Texans. They didn't
Lions
affect the Texans and the Ravens.
About Dan Campbell, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't affect the Ravens and the Chiefs. I mean, I don't think they affected the Chiefs and the Bills. Like, we got to give officiating credit because it's been horrendous. But I got to give him credit this year. Mike says, how would you rank Mahomes if he wins 3 Super Bowls in a row? Well, I think if he wins one next year, then he's past Montana. Because then he'd be 4 with 2 MVPs, which is the same as Montana, but he'd have 3 in a row. So then I think it would be totally him and Brady. But again, you have to win with a second cast of characters. When Jones and Kelsey leave, that's the second cast for Mahomes. And he might be able to win with a second cast. I don't know. But that's what he's got to do for us to be able to get into the Brady discussion. Ben says he thought the game ball was going to be for Taylor Swift. Why would it be for Taylor Swift? I don't care about Taylor Swift. I mean, I'm happy that her and Travis Kelce look genuinely happy, and good for Taylor Swift because the guys she had dated before him were all these kind of rail-thin, European, artsy, frou-frou, drinking Zima guys. And, like, Travis Kelce can lay the pipe, you know? Like, there's a big difference between the two. And so, not that I give a rat's ass, but I'm just, happy for her that they're happy. Other than that, I don't care. And I don't think Taylor Swift had anything to do with this football game or this football team. Texter says there was a horrendously bad missed holding call on the 3rd down game-winning drive when a running back tackled a guy. I don't remember it. I mean, again, we're talking about like that hold they called to decide the Super Bowl last year, which was just, so ticky-tack. And they called it. You know what? It just popped into my head off the top of my head.
They called some run back on a hold this postseason, I think.
The one that I thought was kind of ridiculous was the intentional grounding call on Mahomes. Now, it didn't affect the game, as far as ending it or anything like that, but we have to decide what intentional grounding is.
It looked like that receiver was close enough, no?
That's what I thought. But we have to decide, what defines whether or not a receiver's in the area. Because do I think Mahomes was throwing the ball away on purpose when he threw a chest pass like it was basketball? Yeah, I do. But Noah Gray was within 3 yards of that ball. And if you're within 3 yards of the ball, he chest passed it in that exact direction, and Noah Gray came running back to the ball for that exact reason, to make him the receiver in the area. And they threw it anyways. And I'm like, what are we doing here? If we're just trying to judge intent, there's a lot of times a ball gets thrown away and there's not a receiver in the area, or there's a receiver somewhere in the vicinity of something, and they say, no, it's okay. There was one in the ACC championship game, and I know college is a little different than pro, but there was one in the ACC championship game where the Florida State quarterback just threw it away, and they said, oh, no, this guy 5 yards on the other side. He was in the area. I'm like, what? So I thought that was terrible. But other than that, I thought for the most part, I thought they were pretty good. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. But that one, I'm sorry, I can't roll with that. Somebody sent in a picture, and it says no call, and I see Bosa getting twisted, but I don't see – they just sent me one of a picture, and I don't see the hold that they're talking about being this horrendous holding call. Not one offensive holding call yesterday until overtime. Come on. No, there was one early in the game on Trent Williams on the left tackle when he held the guy and Purdy ran out and threw the ball across the field, and Romo was like, wow, what a play, Jim. That shows you how good he is. And in the play, Trent Williams held the outside pass rusher. Then he threw his hands up like, I didn't do it. And when you throw your hands up like, I didn't do it, normally they're going to throw the flag because chances are you probably did do it. So don't tell me there wasn't any offensive holding, because I know there was offensive holding. Text line's pretty funny right now. Texter says, by your standards, Mahomes has to win one with another team. No. If he wins 9 Super Bowls and they're all with Kansas City, and there's no way that Chris Jones and Travis Kelce are going to be on the team when he wins all 9 of them, then you can make the argument maybe that he'll pass Brady. So, I'm just telling you right now. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. And some people are now trying to argue about how bad the officiating was in the text line. I'm sorry. I thought the officiating was fine. It's not going to be perfect. They're not going to call holding on every play. There are some egregious holds that get missed. There was one completion to, I want to say it was Rashee Rice, where I thought in live time Kelce should have been called for OPI. And then when I went back and looked at it, the ball was completed before Kelce hit the defensive back. And I'm like, nope, that was actually a good call. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Coming up next, the biggest takeaway from Super Bowl 58 and what Super Bowl 58 is really all about. And the historical context will not follow. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. I'm in a giving mood right now. So who wants to go see Dierks Bentley at Bridgestone Arena? Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you will win a pair of tickets before you can buy them to see Dierks Bentley at Bridgestone Arena on Saturday, September 7th. Tickets go on sale Friday at 10 a.m. That's right around the start of football season. Boy, that day can't come fast enough. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. As we discuss Super Bowl 58, and we wrap up what I thought was a very depressing and forgettable 2023 football season. The Kansas City Chiefs are champions. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I used to watch on a loop, ESPN or ESPN2 or one of these ESPN channels, used to run the NFL Films highlights of each Super Bowl, like, ad nauseum. So, and they would do it, like, in succession. So it would be, Steve Sable would come on and say, in Super Bowl 22, it was a battle between the Washington Redskins and the Denver Broncos. For Washington and Doug Williams, it was the shining moment of a lifetime. And then they'd show the highlight videos and everything. And I used to watch those religiously. Like, I loved those. And that kind of NFL Films is what provides the historical context, the long-term ramifications for these Super Bowls. Well, the long-term ramifications of Super Bowl 58, they're going to be the Chiefs are officially a dynasty, which they are. You win 3 in a row, you're a dynasty. Michael Jordan and the Bulls, 3 in a row, dynasty. You win 3, you're a dynasty. Brady and the Patriots, 3 in 4 years, dynasty. Jeter's Yankees, they won in 96, 98, 99, 2000, dynasty. Shaq and Kobe, dynasty. The Houston Rockets won in 94 and 95, not a dynasty. The Toronto Blue Jays won in 92 and 93, not a dynasty. Ben Roethlisberger won 2, not a dynasty. You win 3, you're a dynasty. So the historical context of last night will be about, again, the Chiefs dynasty. Andy Reid is headed to the Hall of Fame. Patrick Mahomes is headed to the Hall of Fame. Travis Kelce is headed to the Hall of Fame. Chris Jones is headed to the Hall of Fame. There may be, when all is said and done, an argument for Harrison Butker in the Hall of Fame. He's not Adam Vinatieri because he doesn't make all these game-winning kicks the way that all these other guys do. But I can't think in the Mahomes era of a playoff field goal, a big one that was missed by Harrison Butker. So that's the historical context of this. But the reality of last night, it wasn't about Mahomes. It wasn't about Andy Reid. It wasn't about Travis Kelce. It wasn't about Chris Jones. It wasn't about Taylor Swift. It was about Kyle Shanahan. When you're not the head coach, you generally speaking do not get blamed. Mike Lombardi said one time, the old general manager, said that it's only the job of the head coach and the general manager to win. Everybody else, you're a special teams coach and the team doesn't win, you'll get another job. Think of all these Vrabel coaches, right? This one went to Carolina. This one went to the Jets. This one went. Everybody's getting all these other jobs. Shane Bowen's a defensive coordinator of the Giants, and Tim Kelly's a tight ends coach. And where's Vrabel? Where's John Robinson? But Kyle Shanahan was associated with the Atlanta Falcons and the biggest meltdown in Super Bowl history, the 28-3. Never seen anything like it. Probably won't ever see anything like it in a Super Bowl game again. But Dan Quinn was the head coach of that team, so Kyle moves on to San Francisco. And Kyle gets the 49ers in the Super Bowl. And then they had an 11-point lead, and they lost to Kansas City. Well, Mahomes was really good, and it's not Kyle Shanahan's fault that Jimmy Garoppolo missed a wide-open Emmanuel Sanders at the end of the game that would have been a touchdown, that would have been. So we can't blame Kyle for the Atlanta game because he wasn't the head coach. We can't blame him for the first one because Garoppolo missed Emmanuel Sanders, and Mahomes is really, really good. And then the next year, we can't blame Kyle Shanahan when they had an 11-point lead in the fourth quarter against the Rams in the NFC title game, because Jimmy Garoppolo was terrible, and because Jaquiski Tartt dropped a sure interception that would have ended the game. Can't blame him for that. So it kind of felt like this Super Bowl had Kyle Shanahan's reputation riding on it. But I wasn't going to get on board before the game and declare that this was going to be the defining moment for Kyle Shanahan. I remember on Jared versus Joe last week, Caroline asked the question about how Stephen A. Smith said that this is the biggest storyline of this Super Bowl is Kyle Shanahan. And I said, there's no way you can say that. Because, you know, if Brock Purdy wins a Super Bowl, what does that mean for his career? And if Mahomes and Andy Reid win another one, what's that mean as far as a dynasty and everything else? But now that we know how the game actually ended, now that we know what happened in between the 75 minutes of football last night, I think there's no way that anyone can make an argument that Kyle Shanahan does not have a problem when it comes to coaching these big games. And while, again, he didn't at the time get the brunt of the blame for the Atlanta meltdown, Dan Quinn hasn't had as many meltdowns since. And while Jimmy Garoppolo got all the blame for that first Super Bowl where, again, a wide-open touchdown to Emmanuel Sanders, you can't draw it up any better than that. Jimmy wasn't on the field last night, and neither was Jaquiski Tart. Patrick Mahomes did not play his A game. Andy Reid did not coach his A game. Kyle Shanahan's biggest criticism, the biggest criticism of Kyle Shanahan, I should say, after the Atlanta Super Bowl was up by 25 points in the second half, they stopped running the ball. And they had a great running game that year with Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman, and they stopped running the ball. Last night, with the game in their hands, they were 5 yards away from putting Kansas City on full tilt, and they couldn't convert a first down. And it wasn't just that they couldn't convert a first down. It's that on 1st and 10, they ran the ball with Christian McCaffrey and gained 5 yards. And now all of a sudden, the clock is in their favor. Kansas City only has 2 timeouts in the 2-minute warning. You guys know as well as I do, apparently Dan Campbell doesn't understand this, but you guys know as well as I do that if they get a fresh set of downs, Kansas City has to stop it 3 times. And if they can't stop it, or let's say McCaffrey gets the ball, gets 3 yards, and they call timeout and they try to stop it, they're not getting the ball back. And the way to beat the Chiefs is the same way the Giants and the Giants beat Tom Brady, which was don't let him get the ball back. Don't let him get it back. Score at the very end of the game. And so Shanahan, the offensive wizard who authored the trade for Christian McCaffrey when everybody around the league was saying, running back, he's injured too much. And after authoring that trade, having the offensive player of the year with a Chiefs defense that was grabbing their shorts, what's he do? Again, 1st and 10, McCaffrey to the Kansas City 35 for 5 yards with 3:27 to go. The next snap will come at 2:40. You are 2 plays away from the 2-minute warning. They've got 2 timeouts. If you get a first down, the best they can do is get the ball back with 1 minute left. If you get another first down, it's over. And instead, Brock Purdy trying to throw the ball to George Kittle, and Trent McDuffie makes the tackle, taking the ball out of the best player on the field's hands against the tired defense. 3rd down and 5 with 2 minutes to go at the warning. Purdy incomplete for Jawan Jennings. You're throwing to your 3rd or 4th best receiver. Your 5th, I would argue, best receiving option, maybe. After Ayuk, Samuel, Kittle, and McCaffrey. And I would probably argue I'd rather throw the ball to Juszczyk than to Jawan Jennings. Kyle Shanahan blew it. And there is no way around that. And again, when NFL Films comes out and they highlight this game, it will all be about Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, Steve Spagnuolo. And it won't be about Kyle Shanahan taking the ball to start overtime when both teams get a possession. It won't be about Kyle Shanahan blowing another double-digit lead in a Super Bowl. It won't be about how he didn't give the ball to Christian McCaffrey. But that's the story of Super Bowl 58. And that Kyle Shanahan, who as soon as he went to the 49ers, turned a lost franchise around. This is the team that everybody around the league, including your team, wants to emulate. And yet, when the game is at its biggest, he melts every time. Again, the first time he wasn't the head coach. The second time, Jimmy Garoppolo missed that throw. The third time, well, they dropped an interception and they were playing with their backup quarterback. This is the fourth time, folks. There is no getting over the one constant. It's like getting divorced. A lot of people get divorced. It happens. It's not the end of the world, and it doesn't mean you're a bad person. You get divorced 4 times, you might want to look in the mirror. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. So I've got a giant bone. We'll get to your phones on this, but I've got a giant bone to pick with Bill Cowher. And the reason why I've got such a bone to pick with Bill Cowher is because I think Bill Cowher knows better. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
It's just something we talked about with, none of us have a ton of experience of it, but we went through all the analytics and talked with those guys, and we just thought to be better. We wanted the ball third. If both teams matched and scored, we wanted to be the ones who had the chance to go win, and we got that field goal, so we knew we had to hold them to at least to a field goal, and if we did, then we felt it was in our hands after that.
That was Kyle Shanahan's explanation for why they wanted the ball to start overtime. Here's my favorite part about it, is that when they took the ball to start overtime, everybody had their own excuse for why they did it, and none of the excuses that everybody was throwing out there to try to justify the stupidity of what Kyle Shanahan did was the actual excuse that Shanahan offered up after the game, which was, if we score and then they score, then we get the ball back, and if we score, we win. But, I mean, what are we doing worrying about the third possession in overtime?
In theory, that sounds like, I guess, an okay plan.
Here's the problem, though. Kansas City said that if they had scored a touchdown, that they would have gone down the field trying to go for two.
I saw that.
They would have never let the game end in San Francisco's hands.
So they probably wouldn't even got a third possession regardless.
Correct. The game would have either been lost or won in the hands of Mahomes, which is what I would do if I was Kansas City too, because, again, that's common sense. So I have a bone to pick with Bill Cowher. So this was on CBS's broadcast after the game. And look, I get it. The network broadcasters have to play nice, and they try not to get people upset, and they've got relationships with friends. And I do wonder, like, if Floyd were still alive, how he would be processing the Bill Belichick failures at the end of the Patriots run. Like, would he deny them and put his arms and say, oh, no, nobody understands what's wrong in New England, and Bill's the best coach who ever lived, and Bill? Or would he look at it and say, I don't know what the hell Bill was doing, going and putting Matt Patricia and Joe Judge in charge of the quarterback? No, I don't know what he would say. But what Belichick's done is, quite frankly, it's been indefensible. But again, in the media, you got friends, try to. This was Bill Cowher last night. And I just, again, I don't mind taking up for your buddies. I don't mind not wanting people mad at you. I know what it's like when people get mad at you all the time for opinions that you have that are just your own opinions. So I'm not trying to sit there and say that, I don't get why Cowher would want to play nice. But then there's outright lying. And this is what Bill Cowher said last night.
To Kyle Shanahan and the San Francisco 49ers, they played a heck of a football game. They didn't lose this game. Patrick Mahomes won this game. And Kyle Shanahan will have this team back. He did all the right things, made all the trick calls, went for it on 4th and 3, put them in a position to finish the game. There was too much Patrick Mahomes. Kudos to the San Francisco 49ers for a very, very successful year.
That's just not true. Like, look, I think Mahomes is awesome, right? And just because I don't think he's as good as Brady doesn't mean that I don't look at Mahomes and I think, oh, my God, this guy is – he might win the next 6 Super Bowls. I have no idea. I remember when they won the first one and Chris Jones came out and talked about winning 6 or 7, and I was like, just be happy you won 1. Well, now we can talk about winning 6 or 7 because Mahomes is really good. But that wasn't a classic Patrick Mahomes is unstoppable kind of performance. There were opportunities to stop Mahomes, and there were opportunities to beat Mahomes in that ball game. And the offensive guru, with 2nd and 5, under 3 minutes to go, Kansas City only with 2 timeouts and the 2-minute warning, running the football down their throat with the best left tackle in the NFL, the best fullback, and the best tailback, and they don't gain another yard? That is absolutely Kyle Shanahan's fault. The idea that there's nothing they could have done, Ray McLeod couldn't have fallen on the football, they got an extra point blocked, they stopped running the ball in the 3rd quarter, there's nothing they could have done. That's just not true. We all watch the same game. And if you want to say that Mahomes would have found a way to make a play no matter what because he's so great, that may be true. But don't tell me that Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers have nothing to be ashamed of. They didn't play very well last night. They didn't score touchdowns off the turnovers early in the game when Kansas City was giving them an opportunity. So don't give me that, Bill Cowher. See, here's one texter goes, Shanahan had that ball bounce off his foot on the punt return. Shanahan got the extra point blocked. Being up 10 in the first half is a little different than being up 10 in the second half. The field goal to make it 10-3, and then the Chiefs get the ball back to start the second half. The up 10 narrative is a little misleading in the particular game. This was a slugfest and a really good game that he lost in overtime. He got beat twice by the second greatest quarterback and coach to ever be in the NFL. Okay, but what about Matthew Stafford? And when they blew that lead? And what about 28-3? Because again, Matt Ryan wasn't on the field yesterday. Julio Jones wasn't on the field yesterday. Austin Hooper wasn't on the field yesterday. Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman were not on the field yesterday. So I guess that's not – you can protect any coach you want by saying, oh, well, it's not his fault that so-and-so made that play. You can do that for any coach. The truth is with Shanahan, if they had won this one, all would have been forgiven. And to blow it the way they blew it, I think now this is just who Shanahan is. And I guess maybe Cowher's friends with Shanahan, or maybe he's friends with Dad, or I don't know. But Bill Cowher, that felt like an outright lie. Oh, Cameron. Oh, no. Cameron texting the text line. So I'm confused. Are the rules for overtime different for the Super Bowl? If so, that's BS. I know the regular season overtime rules, but does the other team still get a chance to score if the first team scores? Oh, no. Cameron. So this goes back 3 years ago to the 2022 game, which was in the 2021 season, where Kansas City came back on Buffalo with 13 seconds, got the ball in overtime, scored, won the game, and everybody cried that Josh Allen didn't get a chance to get the football at the end of the game. And everybody cried about how they should change the rule. And I thought that was ridiculous, that we just have to up and change the rules. Because in this case, this one game didn't end the way I wanted it to end, so we need to change the rules. But they did. And that was a massive story. And if you're a real football fan, you probably should have been following that. Then they kept talking about it on the TV broadcast. The amount of people that do not understand the overtime rules in the playoffs is absolutely confounding to me. How do you not know? It was talked about at length when it happened. Everybody complained except for me. And I'll agree with you. At the time when they passed this rule, I thought it was stupid to have different rules for the regular season than the playoffs. But that's just how it's going to be. Gunner says, don't give Brock Purdy a pass. And I thought Purdy played fine. I don't have any problem with Purdy. I thought, where Chad Withrow ranked him on Friday, saying 7th in the league. And I was like, you mean above Dak Prescott and above Jalen Hurts and above Trevor Lawrence and above? And he's like, yeah. I mean, I think that's fair. I think 7th or 8th. What did we get it down to, Ian? Mahomes, Allen, Rodgers, Burrow, Jackson, Herbert, Stroud, Purdy. Fine by me. I thought Purdy played fine. I didn't think Purdy hurt his team at all. I didn't think Purdy made, a superstar play to win the game. But I'm not this idea of like, oh, no, you get on Purdy. I thought Purdy was fine. 615-737-1025. More of your phones. Now, there is one guy who I think last night should have punched a ticket to Canton. But because of the fakakta rules of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, this guy will never have a bust in Canton. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
I'm just so proud of the defense, man, and the whole team effort. Special teams, Harrison Bucker hitting from about 70. Offense stepping up when it's needed. This game just was the microcosm of our entire season. It was everybody. It wasn't just offense. It wasn't just defense. Everybody had to step up, and it was a heck of a run. I think it made us tougher for moments like right now.
That was Mahomes talking about, hey, look at that defense. And I agree. I thought their defense was excellent. And so I have a bone to pick with the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I think we can all agree. Andy Reid, Ian, is going to the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Patrick Mahomes is going to the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Travis Kelce is going to the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Chris Jones is going to the Hall of Fame.
Most likely, yeah.
You know who's not going to end up in the Hall of Fame? Steve Spagnuolo. And yet, I thought yesterday, all things considered, and look, I don't run the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and I think their rules are downright silly and not a representation of what really matters in football. I thought Steve Spagnuolo last night punched his ticket to the Hall of Fame. We are talking about probably the biggest game defensive coordinator of our era. If you're a millennial like me, probably of my lifetime. And I think it's absurd because I think the way that we pick people to go in the Hall of Fame is truly pathetic and it's stupid. So last night on the broadcast, Jim Nantz is talking about how ridiculous it is that Brent Musburger is not in the Hall of Fame. And I would agree. The lead host of the first pregame show that made pregame shows famous, the NFL Today, and he's not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? That's crazy. But he'll never get in. Robert Kraft has 6 Super Bowls. And he's not in the Hall of Fame. But guess who is in the Hall of Fame? Patrick Willis is in the Hall of Fame. How is Patrick Willis? So who had a bigger impact on the sport of football? Brent Musburger or Patrick Willis? You know the answer to that. I mean, how many games did Patrick Willis play in that mattered? And so Steve Spagnuolo has now won 4 Super Bowls as a defensive coordinator, including holding the greatest offense that I have ever seen in my entire life, the 2007 Patriots, a team that was 18-0 to 274 total yards and 14 points in a Super Bowl. That is a masterclass. Last night, Steve Spagnuolo was the best coach on the field. You could argue Steve Spagnuolo was as much the MVP of that game as Patrick Mahomes was. And he's never going to make it to the Hall of Fame. Just like Roone Arledge is probably never going to make it to the Hall of Fame, the guy who founded Monday Night Football. Just like Bud Adams, who helped co-found the AFL, which eventually merged with the NFL. He'll never make it to the Hall of Fame. Because the criteria with which we select for the Hall of Fame is absurd. Players can get in. Just, hey, who votes for the players? Everybody raise your hand. What do we think about Andre Johnson? Raise your hand. Did you know that only one coach and one quote-unquote contributor can get into the Hall of Fame in a given year? So the year that Belichick is eligible for the Hall of Fame, everybody else is not getting in. The year that Andy Reid is eligible for the Hall of Fame, nobody else is getting in. That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, right? And that's the problem with these Hall of Fames, is they all have these weird voting criterias, and there's no real standards that are enforceable other than, well, we just think, and that's how baseball ends up with Scott freaking Rowland and Joe Mauer in their Hall of Fames. It's how football ends up with Andre Johnson. I'm sorry. Andre Johnson is not a Hall of Famer. He should not be in the Hall of Fame. He's got 2 All-Pro selections in his career. 2. Are we kidding? 2 All-Pro selections get you in the Hall of Fame? But Steve Spagnuolo and his 4 Super Bowls as defensive coordinator aren't going to get him into the Hall of Fame? That's crazy talk. Ernie Zampese, he won't be in the Hall of Fame. Dick LeBeau, he won't be in the Hall of Fame. But Bill Cowher is. It's crazy to me. What's the point of having a Hall of Fame if it should just be called the Players Hall of Fame? Because, again, there are so many people that have helped make the game that aren't necessarily players, and they belong in the Hall of Fame. Brent Musburger belongs in the Hall of Fame. Jim Nantz belongs in the Hall of Fame. He's been the number 1 guy doing games for 40 years. He should be in the Hall of Fame, even though I didn't think he had a Hall of Fame performance last night. But it just sucks thinking about how big these games are. You know, how much these narratives rely on Super Bowls and legacies. And if the Titans had won the Super Bowl in 99, Steve McNair would have been the game's MVP. Steve McNair would be in the Hall of Fame. A league MVP, a Super Bowl MVP. He was incredible in the second half of that game. He'd be in the Hall of Fame. Eddie George probably in the Hall of Fame too. But no, they didn't win. Spagnuolo's won 4, and he's not going to get in the Hall of Fame. Who are some of these other bums that got in the Hall of Fame this year? I saw it. Every year there's 1 or 2 of these Edgerrin James type players that make it to the Hall of Fame that I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. And this year when they put out the Hall of Fame class, I said to myself, this is just absurd. I mean, they put a punt returner in the Hall of Fame, but they can't put the defensive coordinator that shut down the 07 Patriots and absolutely locked down at every big third down in the second half yesterday, the San Francisco 49ers.
Julius Peppers, he probably deserved to get in.
I am fine with Peppers.
Dwight Freeney.
Nah.
Nah. Let's see. Steve McMichael.
Now, I think he's has ALS and is an old school player before my time, so I'm not going to nitpick that one.
And Randy Gradishar.
Yeah, again, if they're the old guys,
he played it from 74 to 83, and then McMichael was from 80 to 94. So, and then it was Patrick Willis, Julius Peppers, Hester, as you mentioned, and Dwight Freeney and Andre Johnson.
I'm cool with Peppers. Julius Peppers is a Hall of Famer. Dwight Freeney, 3 All-Pros, played on about 96 teams.
Peppers has 34 more sacks than Freeney does.
Peppers, I believe Peppers belongs in the Hall of Fame.
He was, and he played for a long time, and he was probably the best defensive end there for a hot minute.
Yeah, he was truly, I really think he was an all-time great player.
They put last year they put Rondé Barber in.
Yeah, are you freaking kidding me?
I don't know about that.
Again, Edgerrin James. That's all I have to say. Whenever you want to talk about the validity of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, all I say is Edgerrin James. Edgerrin James is in the Hall of Fame. Edgerrin James and Bill Cowher are 2 of the most ridiculous inductees into the Hall of Fame that they were fine. And then every time I get mad, because I think Bud Adams should be in the Hall of Fame, but every time I get mad, somebody who votes on the Hall of Fame has to cross their arms and say, well, it's not the Hall of Very Good. I'm like, shut the hell up. Bud Adams founded the AFL.
It is a weird combination of numbers versus I don't know what else they choose. It's weird how they decide. It's you have to have the numbers, but some players don't have to have the numbers. And if you have the numbers, you're automatically vaulted up to higher standard than maybe you should, just as far as accomplishments. So I don't know.
Mike's mad. He says that I need to find a better example than Patrick Willis, that Patrick Willis belongs to be in the Hall of Fame. He says he agrees with my overall argument, but Patrick Willis is a bad example. Ian, do you think Patrick Willis is a Hall of Famer? If I just thumbs up, thumbs down, Hall of Fame, yes or no?
As much as I'd like to say yes, but, he's a local guy, right? So I think some people take it a little bit more personal because he's from Tennessee. But no, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer.
Right. To me, this is thumbs up, thumbs down. Is Peyton Manning a Hall of Famer? Yes.
Willis might have been the best middle linebacker for a year or two, but they didn't really win anything.
Should Andre Johnson be in the Hall of Fame?
I probably wouldn't have put Andre Johnson in the Hall of Fame either.
You want to put Drew Brees in the Hall of Fame? I got no problem with that.
Another one of those, I guess, that has good numbers, but didn't really, productive, but didn't really accomplish much as far as winning.
So Rob says, I think Dick LeBeau got in. Dick LeBeau got in as a player. Dick LeBeau has not been in as a coach. In fact, I mean, talk about slap in the face. I Googled whether or not assistant coaches are even eligible for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So the way that the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2022 decided to celebrate assistant coaches is to recognize them with the Awards of Excellence. So Ernie Zampese, Alex Gibbs, Jimmy Ray, Terry Robisky, and Fritz Shermer were all given the Awards of Excellence by the Pro Football Hall of Fame to recognize significant contributors to the game. You want to know how they announced it? On the Monday afternoon version of the Sirius XM Blitz program with Bruce Murray and Rich Gannon. And let me say this. I love the Sirius XM Blitz. I love Rich. I love Bruce. I spent time with both of them last week. But, Steve Spagnuolo deserves better than that. Spagnuolo, I believe this. If you cannot tell the history of the sport without that person, they belong in the Hall of Fame. And I believe Steve Spagnuolo has done enough now to where you cannot tell the history of the NFL without his great defenses in these Super Bowls. And that, again, to me, the Giants one was the one where it's that's the best team I've ever seen. The 2007 Patriots that didn't win the Super Bowl, 18-1. That's the best team I've ever seen. 14 points in the Super Bowl. Steve Spagnuolo. Brady could not breathe in that game because of Steve Spagnuolo. One texter says, if Patrick Willis played for the Jags or the Titans, nobody would ever consider him. Bingo. LD from McMinnville says, if you believe Andre Johnson doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame, there's no way Derrick Henry can get in the Hall of Fame. Has Andre Johnson finished first or second in receiving in the NFL 4 out of 5 years? With the other year being that he was hurt and was leading when he got hurt? Is Andre Johnson a part of a club that only 6 other guys have been a part of? I don't think Andre Johnson ever carried his team to the AFC title game. Unbelievable. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So, this football season is officially over. And honestly, I'm not going to miss the 2023 football season. This feels like kind of a new year. When someone had a really bad year and they look back on it and they're like, good riddance, 2023. Well, that's how I feel about this football season. But I did end the year on a guarantee, and I am ready to make a 2024 guarantee right now. And we will do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Are you also chasing the quarterback greats of this game? Because there's been so much discussion about now Mahomes in there with Brady. You got to hear some of it.
Yeah, I hear it. I mean, to me, it's always going to be tough because Brady beat me in the Super Bowl. That's the one thing you'll always have in my head. But it gives me something to strive for every single day is chasing greatness. And whenever I'm tired, I might not want to work out. I know that I have to do it in order to be in these moments like this. And so I know it's a long ways away. And it's not something that I'm like, I need to get 7 Super Bowls right now. But it does give me that added motivation to continue to be great every single day.
Okay, that was Mahomes yesterday. And again, this is just the beginning of Brady and Mahomes chase of Brady and all that. But last night, after the game was over, Adam Schefter tweeted out that one of these teams will kick off in Kansas City to start the 2024 season. The Chargers, Broncos, Raiders, Texans, Ravens, Bengals, Saints, or Buccaneers. And I am ready to make a guarantee. By the way, Ian, how am I doing on my guarantees? I know I hit the one on Sunday.
Yes, you did. You got that one correct.
I guaranteed the Chiefs would win.
Mm-hmm. And then before that, you guaranteed the Chiefs would beat the Dolphins wild card weekend in the freezing cold. So you got that. You're 2 for 2 in your playoff guarantees for the Chiefs. So it's off to a good start.
So I am ready to make a guarantee. I guarantee that week 1 of the 2024 season will be the LA Chargers at the Kansas City Chiefs. And here's why. Because what they want to do is they always want a good game for that first game, but they don't want to burn a premium game on that first Thursday night because there's a lot of windows, right? Both Fox and CBS get a doubleheader, and there's the Sunday night game and the Monday night game. And I believe Monday night has a doubleheader usually too. So they don't want to just, play the trump card that first week and throw it down and say, okay, here's going to be, we're going to put Bengals at Chiefs as the opening game. Ravens at Chiefs as the opening game. The second thing is they're not going to put some crap bum team with a crap bum quarterback in there. Will Levis not going to be on the opening Thursday night, at least not this year. So with that eliminates the Broncos, the Raiders, the Saints, and the Bucks as the meaningless teams, and the Ravens and the Bengals as the really high-profile games that they'd rather save for a Sunday night football or something else down the road, which leaves the Chargers and the Texans. Now, the Texans could be a wild card because C.J. Stroud is a television-worthy quarterback. But isn't it just too simple to put Harbaugh's return to the NFL, the championship college coach, opening up against the championship Chiefs to open the season, a game that in week 6 isn't as much of a premium game anymore because it's not Harbaugh's first game back. So I guarantee it, Chargers and Harbaugh opening up in Kansas City against the Chiefs for the first game of 2024. Ian put me down on the guarantee list for that one.
Yep.
That's going to do it for us. The Commodore Hour is coming up next. Stillman and Company. We will be at Bridgestone Arena ahead of tomorrow's Big Preds game. We'll see you all tomorrow at 2.